Boom. Hey folks, sorry I'm late, but I assure you I have the most runkle reason for being late there ever was. Do you want to hear it? Sure you do. I got delayed a little bit because I was mocking a scammer. And then I looked over and I was like, oh crap, I gotta hit start. So here's the scammer mockery. Dude messages me out of the blue on Discord. And just out of the blue there, saying, hey, sorry if this offends you. I'd like you to be my sugar baby. Just letting you know my intentions in case you're interested. I'll give you a weekly allowance and send you gifts. Just basically paying for your time and spoiling you. I hope I get a reply from you. And already I know this is a scam because it's not plausible. There are more Nigerian princes in the universe than there are people who want me to be their sugar baby. So, so my response was, I'm pretty sure you don't want that. And then they respond back with, I'm serious here, okay? How does $1,000 weekly sounds with an S at the end? So S at the start, S at the end. No sexually related stuffs with an S at the end. So, and I said, sounds like a scam. And he said, maybe after you get your first payment, you'll get to know I'm real. And so my response was, who do you think you're messaging? And then no response, no response, no response. And then I was like, think fast, scam bro. Anyway, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be getting any of those $1,000 paychecks. So, yeah, yeah. So, Discord scammers, that's kind of the thing, or one of the things for today. So, I'm pretty sure when they were asked who I was, they were like, ah, crap, they're on to us. So, because, what else are they going to say? This is a to whom it may concern sugar baby offer. If that's the case, then this dude is substantially non-picky. And, all right. So, what is it? We're going to start off. I am going to note that this will be a shorter stream, and I can already hear you laughing at me, and stop it, because I mean it. I swear. We are not going to cover all of the things that I would like to cover, because I am elbows deep. Let's go with elbows deep in working on a factum applying for leave to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada, which is tough because the Supreme Court takes about 10% of the leave applications they get. And what is it? So out of every 10, they take about one. And that means that the standard is really high for what I have to write and what I have to do. And yeah, it's a whole challenge. So that I would love to tell you that my writing is going well. It is not. I have massive writer's block. And typically my writer's block is best dealt with deadlines, but I can't do that this time. And the reason why I can't do that is because my deadline is in April, and the Karen Reid trial will have started. And I'm sure you folks will want me to be doing some coverage of the Karen Reid thing. So, yeah. What is it? Do you have to do the robe thing at the Supreme Court? Yes, you do. However, I might not be the person arguing it. I'm going to certainly write it, but yeah, I don't know that that's I don't. The thing is that at the Supreme Court, they do kind of get judgy, I'm told, if you are a self rep. Even if you're a lawyer self rep, they get a little judgy. They kind of expect you to hire a lawyer if you. And so basically, what I'm told is that they kind of assume that if you're self repping at the Supreme Court, that you are a crazy person. And I mean, good guess, but I don't want them to know. So, so I may need to hire somebody. And that also means that I may need to hit you guys up for a fundraiser. The reason why I may need to hit you up for a fundraiser is that the cost of all of that will be in the not ones of thousands, it'll be in the tens of thousands of dollars. So, yeah, I might need to hit you guys up for some money, but we're not doing that quite yet. And maybe I should have taken that sugar baby up on their thing there, but anyway, if you're wondering what my appeal issue is about, it's about firearms, and it's about whether or not gun owners are entitled to due process and protecting the rights of gun owners to challenge the decisions of the registrar and so forth. And I also have this I gotta cover. Geekbot says, for your supreme motivation, if you finish one more page, chat will allow one whole supreme pizza. Fair enough. Fair enough. Why did they make it so expensive? The reason why they make it so expensive is because in order to file something at the Supreme Court, you need a filing agent. Basically, the Supreme Court is so miserable to deal with that you need to hire people who kind of specialize in the whole Supreme Court thing. And that is, that's kind of a whole hassle. And yeah, but also if you're hiring a lawyer to speak on your behalf, it is incredibly expensive. It's not cheap. Lawyers are expensive, and they're expensive because because ideally they're worth it. So if I've got to hire a lawyer to do some of this stuff, I'm going to have to pay them a pile of money. Will I be auctioning off dinner with Runkle? I suppose I could do that. Yeah. No promises on like anything else, but Vez says, you already won before the Supreme Court. I did. But I haven't won as a self-rep before the Supreme Court. Does the Supreme Court broadcast live or only pre-recorded? This is the other fun thing. The Supreme Court broadcasts live or pre-recorded. And the reason why I say that is that a lot of their stuff is broadcast live. However, some things are recorded and some things don't get broadcast. When I went to the Supreme Court, it was not broadcast live. It was broadcast after the fact. And basically the reason why is because there was a publication ban in my matter. The name of the complainant, which I don't actually remember, was it can't be broadcast. It can't be shared. It can't be, like, even if I knew that, I couldn't tell you guys that. I couldn't tell you who that was. Because it was a sex assault file. So they don't have any ability, like they don't allow for sharing her name because of, because basically she shouldn't be put in the public record, right? That's fair. Because there was also a domestic element to it, I also can't share his name, the client. Even though, ultimately we won, still can't share his name. So, and that's because when it's domestic, sharing his name basically shares her name by contagion. So basically they said, listen, we're not broadcasting this live. We are recording it, and we will put the recording up if it's possible to do so without like putting them on, without violating the publication ban. And so sometimes they have, for instance, said, okay, we're going to put this up live and then, or we're going to put it up after and they'll bleep things out. But if there's too many, redactions that have to make, then they just don't put it up at all. So then it just doesn't happen. So a lot of Supreme Court stuff does go up immediately, is live broadcast. And that's because a lot of the Supreme Court stuff doesn't implicate that. If somebody was just arrested for having drugs, then not a big deal. Do I have an idea now who I'd ask to represent you? It's probably going to be Supreme Advocacy. They're a firm I've worked with before. I've worked with them before. I like their work, so that's probably them. Somebody says, I need a new chair. You're not wrong, but I'm not made of new chairs. How do they name the case? So when it's a case, like an ordinary case, might be R v, Bobson, right? And, so like, let's say, here, I'll just pull this up here. I'll just present, share screen. We'll start off with a letter here. So let's say our accused was, Michael Morrissey, right? And he's not actually charged with anything, but let's imagine he was. If it was like a drug case, they would just style it as the King and Morrissey, right? So it would be R.V. Morrissey, right? If it was like a family, like a domestic dispute, it would be R.V.M.M. And, you wouldn't know who that was, right? So that's kind of the thing there. So that's kind of how they do it. We're going to start off looking at some of these letters from Bedro. So that's why we've got Michael Morrissey here. Somebody also asked, what am I drinking? Well, chat, I also want to know what you guys are drinking, if you guys are looking at it. So are all plaintiffs R? No, just the government is R. The reason why the government is R is because it stands for Rex, for the king. When we had the queen being still alive, it stood for Regina. So it's either the king and, so-and-so, or the queen and so-and-so. So technically, all of the cases I litigate are against the king now. And I see we've got a Young Jerks raid. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. What I'm drinking, people were asking. This is Clamato plus some spices, some seasoning, plus beer. So it's sort of a cut rate knockoff michelada. So that's Regina. Yep, for the queen. So yes, it's now that's only when it's the federal government, and it's only when it's the federal government in criminal cases. When you're up against the government in other things, it might be, versus Canada. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. All right. I see people saying, yikes, stomach torture. It's good. It's good. All right. What was the status on uploading the stream that was split in two? I need to actually get on doing that. I need to get off my butt and do it because I've been busy. And also I got to do that. Light Queen saying, for your Supreme Court, just in case, or fund, if it doesn't happen, put it towards your Runkle Bunker. Thank you so much. The Supreme Court thing is going to happen. It's just, the question is going to be how much I spend. Because I think my estimate for the leave application is going to be at about, $8,000 to somewhere 8 to 10. So that's 8 to 10 to start. The other one is, and then if I succeed at that, then I have to do the full Supreme Court brief, right? And so that'll be its own additional thing, its own additional amount of work, its own additional, own additional costs. So Elf Wiggins says, so the bunkie would be cheaper. You're not wrong. The bunkie would be cheaper. But this is trying to improve the law for everybody. And yeah. All right. Let's jump in because I, have some things there. Ooh, I see. I like Paddington Place. It'll probably be like 161 or 160 acres. So, do I need anything to auction? Not quite yet. Did I have any nicknames as a kid? Not really. I wasn't popular enough to have nicknames. So, all right. Are there grants? No. They just make you pay for it. I see some people asking, what is a leave application? Well, the Supreme Court doesn't take every case you want to send them. There's lots more people who want to go to the Supreme Court than the Supreme Court actually will accept. Did I ship everything yet? No, I still have more stuff to ship. So what does that mean is that you have to, for some things, you can get to the Supreme Court as of right. And what I mean as of right is that you have to, is that they have to take your file. But most applications to the Supreme Court are by leave. And by leave means that you have to actually apply for permission, and you have to actually request permission and basically say, Supreme Court, this is why you should hear this matter. And when the Supreme Court grants or refuses that, they do so without giving reasons. Like, if I get denied leave, they will just say, this application for leave is denied. And that's all I'll get. So, stakes are high. That is, that is a whole thing. And yeah, this one. I'll fight this all the way to the Supreme Court. Sir, this is a parking ticket. Exactly. So, okay. So let's have let's cover the super chats first, just so I don't get too behind. Satan's representative says, don't worry, it's not the length of your stream that matters, it's just how you use it. I feel like that is a reference to something. Tony P says, thanks for taking the time to be with us tonight. Those Supreme Court briefs don't write themselves. The sad thing is I'm not making huge headway, but yeah. Someone bloody random, have you finished your homework? I have not. Brewberries, former MMA champ Cain Velasquez got sentenced to 5 years and the judge was emotional. DA asked for 30, defense asked for none. Oh, interesting. That's defense did pretty good then. DSN says, thanks, thank you. Gray Space, are you not our collective sugar baby? Let's not call it that, chat. That I'm feeling uncomfortable. DSN, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Vez from Quebec, if I super chat 1,000 tonight, did I get you for a week? Vez, at some point I will come, we'll do the talking, we'll do the talk, all of that. The other thing I'm wondering, Vez, is how is Carney's decision to skip the TVA debate going over in Quebec? Because that one I'm curious about. Patty Hoffman, add Sugar Mama, Sugar Daddy Patreon level. Fair. I'm Kelly and I grow it. Will you be auctioning off dinner with Runkle? I could do that sometime, but it might be weird. I don't know. Rainman says, is this the Section 74 thing? It is. Yes. Rainman, thank you for the 10 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Volkas, afterwards, how much do you think you'll be able to cover here on the channel? 100% of it. Because it's actually... So, guys, just so you're aware, this case is Runkle v. Canada. I have self-repped up through the Court of Appeal on this one. Now, before you say, hey, that's awesome, good for you, Runkle, I have lost. But the loss is put it this way. I lost because some other jerks didn't let me run it. And what I mean by that is that some other people got to the Court of Appeal first. And basically, my decision at the Court of Appeal was, they said, Runkle wants to take this up to the Supreme Court. Good for him. But we are bound by the prior decision we made in this other case that I wasn't arguing. And therefore, Runkle loses here. So it's like, great. And the thing is that I had better facts because I laid a better factual foundation for my file than they did. And I had better arguments because I know this issue better than almost anyone else in Canada. There's a couple of people I will note who came to firearm law before me and probably are better at it than I am. And that is Ed Burlew and Solomon Friedman in Canada. But basically, I got smacked down because the case law that came before me, and yeah, that's just how that is. But I am going to try to take it up to a higher court level, and yeah. So a couple of rubes ruined it for you. Yep, pretty much. And I told people not to do it, and they did it anyway. So, but yes, I will probably be able to cover 100% of it. AG, resisting the urge to toss my steno machine out the window due to finger control shenanigans, so joining on my practice break. Hey, Runkle. Hey, AG. Fiona W., thank you for 10 gifted memberships. Kirsten Factor, Chair Fund. Sorry, I'm poor. It's all good. Thank you. Cherry Mills, thank you for being a member. I'm glad to have you here. VictorMan7777, like a writ of certiorari in the U.S. We also have writs of certiorari here. The procedural history... application at provincial court, struck for lack of jurisdiction, application for writ of certiorari to force jurisdiction, and then loss at the Court of King's Bench, up to Court of Appeal to appeal the loss at King's Bench, loss at King's Bench or at Court of Appeal, and now I apply for leave to the Supreme Court. Golden Productions, can we see you argue? Sometimes you, if you go back and you find my birthday stream, you will find the only known recording of me arguing in court. And the reason why I say the only known recording is because Canadian courts do not record their proceedings. So the only exception to that is the Supreme Court of Canada. So the Supreme Court of Canada does record its proceedings, and given that I was at the Supreme Court, they recorded it. So for my birthday stream, I went over my Supreme Court appearance. And it was the only time that I have watched that video beginning to end. And that's because anytime I watch the video, I just see all of the mistakes in it. I see all of the things where I'm like, ooh, I wish I could have argued that better. I wish I could have done, yeah. So all of those things, I'm just like, I hate watching myself. I hate listening to myself. One of the things is that most of my videos are pretty much unedited. There's not a lot of cuts and so forth. And part of this is that I have a very difficult time watching myself on the edits. And this is the thing is, but you won, so it's all good. The thing is that even though I won, I still come out of my appearance and I hate seeing it, right? I just, even though I won, all I see and all I can hear is the stuff I wish I had said better. I am a perfectionist and I will second guess the hell out of myself. There is no trial that I have walked out of where I wasn't sitting there going, man, I wish I'd argued this a little better, or man, I wish I'd done this a little better. Even the ones where I win, I am like, oh my God, I wish I had argued this other thing. You know, And I can't help it. It's just, this is how my brain goes. The instant I walk out of a courtroom, my brain is attacking me. It's like a mental autoimmune condition where your brain just attacks yourself. And that's it, right? So that's all that's how it goes. Is there anything different I'd like to see with that decision? No, that decision was just a win. It was just an absolute win. So yeah, I have trouble watching myself. It is what it is. So I'm probably never going to watch it again. PJ10 says 2 years as a Ruggletarian. Yay! Thank you so much. Linda Santiago, thanks for the Monday night live stream. I wasn't sure I was going to do one, and then I was like, I actually really think I need to, because I have been burying myself in this work, and I think I need to come up for air to basically hang out with you guys. I, believe it or not, I really do love hanging out with you guys. This whole thing, I never thought it was something that would be part of my life, but now that it is, I really enjoy seeing the faces, seeing the people I know in the chat. You guys are all really, great folks. So yeah. Buruberry says, to be fair, Kane went for dude who did bad stuff to his 4-year-old son. Okay, fair. Vicky, Reese's mom says, don't you have something like the NRA in Canada that could help with funding? I'm going to be reaching out to them. Tristan Morris for the Silk Fund. I'm not going to get silks anytime soon. Kurt Eaton, the 10 beers defense was awesome. Thank you. I'll explain that in a second. Steve Ace is also 2 years of Ruggletarian. Thanks, Ian. Thank you, guys. So the 10 beers defense there. So basically, I had somebody who sent me an email at one point, a really snarky email. And they basically said that that I do the Runkleisms on purpose just to... they basically said that I do the Runkleisms just to, like, put on a play for you guys. And that is not true. I do the Runkleisms by accident because I just cannot help myself. And the proof that I do them by accident because I just can't help it is my Supreme Court appearance. Because at my Supreme Court appearance, I was asked, like, well, isn't this an innocent mistake? And I said, well, Your Honor, there's sort of a consideration here as to sort of the degree of risk they're taking in terms of they're taking a risk that they're violating the law here. And you can think about this as like a 2-beer situation. You know, some things might be like a 2-beer situation in terms of degree of risk. But this is more of a 10-beer situation where they really should have known at this point that they are going to be violating the law, that they're going to have a problem. And, you know, we don't have a whole lot of sympathy when they're in the 10-beer situation. And I look up at the justices, and they have this expression like, did he seriously just say 10-beer situation? So, I think that is the first recorded Runkleism. I tried to set a goal and it didn't actually set. Why is this not working? All right, I'm going to have to try again. But yeah, I mean, when my Supreme Court appearance has what I think is a definite Runkleism in it, I just, I don't, I feel like I've got a good defense to that particular allegation. So we need 10-beer situation merch. That's not a bad idea. So the thing is that one came about, the Runkleisms largely come out when I sort of turn off my filter. And that one, the filter issue was just the filter issue was just, I was under stress. I was like, I got to answer them. So the filter kind of came off. So, yeah. There will be a judge that will correct you and remind you that Lucky Lager commonly comes in 8-packs. And I know this because right behind me, I have an 8-pack with Lucky Lager in it. Somebody says, wait, you have a filter? Yes, I have a filter. I just am bad at cleaning it. Jim Jams has got gifted a Runkle and EDB membership this week. I should get a lotto ticket. You should. Haven't seen EDB in my chat in a while, but yeah. Isaiah 3, it's a magic number. Thank you. Amanda Lang, happy to celebrate a birthday with you. I only wish my member months represented my birthday years. I feel that one. Glamasus, I'm getting hooked on snarky runkleisms. Thank you. Corey Cast, Baby Sugar Fund. Avrila's Hobby Channel, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. And Tony P, we doing milestones? I finally eclipsed 2 years. Awesome. And Rainman YZ, time to lift a lucky. Thank you. We're setting that as a super chat there. So, all right. She's traveling again. Her life is crazy. Fair. Yeah. I wasn't talking necessarily about this just a while. It's been a while. All right. Oh, yes. Paper planes sound really good. Paper planes are my favorite drink. Paper plane, live gimlet. A lime gimlet is good. Caesar. Not sure what else. Galena Ward, my 30th birthday is in 1 week. Wish me luck. Good luck. I don't know why we're wishing you luck on that one, but yeah. All right, let's jump in here. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at a Bedro letter. What's in a paper plane? Paper plane is feeling a little OG here tonight. Love Runkle. Thank you. Awesome. Paper plane is equal parts Amaro Nonino, bourbon. What's the other one? Lime juice, and there's one other ingredient. I forget what it is. I forget the other ingredient. It's like 4 things that are, yes, Aperol. Amaro Nonino, bourbon, lemon, and Aperol. Yes, it should be lemon, not lime. And you get this drink that's kind of pinkish in color, and it tastes basically like a lemon drop, like the candy. So the first 3 taste like a lemon drop, and then the 4th and afterwards tastes like a lemon drop with a floor aftertaste. Now, if you ever are in a position to make a paper plane for Mrs. Runkle, Mrs. Runkle likes it a little sweeter, so she swaps out the lemon juice for orange juice. So, all right, and yes, I do like a last word. Those are good. I don't know about an aviation, so yeah. But yeah, they're basically 3 kinds of alcohol mixed with lemon. All right. So, to Michael Morrissey regarding referral for criminal investigation of illegal interception of oral communications under the law. So, Vez, I don't know. I feel like their debates do cost a chunk of money, so I don't know that that's unfair. But fair enough. I just thought it was cowardly of him to bail on the French debates when everyone else is going for it. But fair. All right. Dear District Attorney Morrissey, I write in response to Canton Chief of Police Helena Rafferty's letter to you, dated March 20th, sent in response to my letter to her, dated March 10th, requesting that the Canton Police Department investigate alleged violations of the law by Town Selectman Christopher Albert at D&E Pizza, which he owns and is located at address. I'm not going to worry about like blocking that out because you can find it on Google. Chief Rafferty, citing Mr. Albert's prominent political status and his appointing authority over her, concluded that the CPD has a possible conflict of interest, which could lead to an appearance of impropriety if the CPD investigated whether Mr. Albert has engaged in criminal activity. Consequently, Chief Rafferty has referred the matter to you and requested that the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office either handle any investigation or refer it to another county prosecutor. Now, I'm just going to say, Chief Rafferty is correct that there's a conflict of interest. I think Chief Rafferty is proper to reject this one, but I don't know that Morrissey is also lacking a conflict of interest. They also note the footnote here. Chief Rafferty described my request as limited to an investigation of events that occurred on March 4th, 2025. To be clear, my request includes a general investigation into whether Mr. Albert repeatedly intercepted oral communications of anyone at any time without their actual knowledge, and whether he unlawfully possessed an intercepting device with the intent to do the same. Fair. So the DA has an actual conflict of interest, which requires your referral of this investigation to another county. I agree. Even before I got into that, even before I got to this paragraph, I was like, there is a conflict of interest. And it's like, there totally is. I kind of feel like Morrissey should have referred the whole thing out, but yeah. As an initial matter, the events of March 4th outside D&E led to the arrest of Aidan Carney for alleged witness intimidation of Mr. Albert and his son, Colin Albert. Your office's long-standing adversarial history with Mr. Carney and close relationship and defense of Mr. Albert and Colin is well known. You remember the hostage video where it's like, you leave them alone. They're good people. You leave them alone, and you stop, you stop intimidating and harassing. Like you're bad people. They're good people. Like I feel like once you do that video where you're sitting there in front of your unsorted books that you clearly aren't using, because if you did use them, you would have to keep them in order and organized. Yeah, once you do that video, yeah, I see people in the chat going, it has to stop. Once you do that video, I feel like the conflict of interest writes itself, right? It's just kind of obvious. So, for example, on August 25th, 2023, presumably at the request of Mr. Albert, his wife Julie, and others, you took the virtually unprecedented step of making and then widely disseminating, oh, here it is, to a local and national broadcast and print media, a formal statement defending your ongoing murder prosecution against Karen Reed. The hostage video. Among the reasons, if you're wondering, is this a live reaction? You bet it is, because I'm like getting ahead of myself here. Among the reasons you made this ill-advised public statement was A, to implicitly criticize Mr. Carney, and B, vigorously vouch for the credibility of the Albert family and other witnesses against Ms. Reed, which of course is wildly inappropriate to do. The prosecutor should not be vouching for the credibility of witnesses. They should not be any of this, right? It should just be that they just run their trial. On information and belief, acting at the specific request of Mr. Albert and / or his wife, Chief Rafferty, you allowed them, as prosecution witnesses, to edit the What? What? To edit the contents of your public statement while you were literally filming it? By adopting their note of concern and then declaring Colin Albert did not commit murder? Wait, they were... What? The witnesses in the trial were, like, dictating part of his, Why is Morrissey still a DA? And then there's a footnote. On August 25th, 2023, your then press officer, David Traub, sent Julie, who on information and belief is Julie Albert. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that there are other Julies in this town, but I'm not aware of any other Julies in this town. And I apologize to any other Julies who happen to be in the town of Canton, because you share a name with somebody who sucks. An email in which Mr. Traub told Julie that Chief Rafferty communicated your note of concern to us while we were actively filming the very statement you were suggesting. Wow. And I see a request from chat that I'm going to grant. Granted.
Conspiracy.
Wow. All of this. I mean, I'm not saying that this is pretty incestuous, but I am saying that if this town was a person, it would have some serious like Habsburg chin going on, because oh my God, law enforcement in this town is wow. Yeah, I'm never gonna go to Canton. I feel like if I go to Canton, I'm just gonna yeah, it'll be like the scene from Deliverance where it's like banjo music and then it's like get the shotgun, because wow. Oh, and apparently they have the email. It's Julie Crucillo, not Albert. Okay. I don't know who Crucillo is. Tim Albert's baby mama's sister. Okay. So a different Julie. Wow. On or before September 26, 2023, you agreed to recuse your office and engage Kenneth Mello to serve as special prosecutor to investigate whether Mr. Carney intimidated Mr. Albert, Colin, and others. On September 29th, you emailed numerous high-ranking court officials about your grave concern about Mr. Albert being intimidated by Mr. Carney and demanded an investigation into that matter. Wow. Mr. Albert and Colin remain named witnesses against Mr. Carney, and at least 2 prosecutions being handled by a special prosecutor. Moreover, they are prosecution witnesses against Ms. Reed, whose trial begins in less than 2 weeks. At this point, though, did you see the list of prosecution witnesses? Like, Mr. Carney is also listed as a prosecution witness. I'm like, who isn't listed as a prosecution witness? If I'm not careful, I'm going to be a prosecution witness. How much was the flamethrower? About $2,500 US. So a lot of money. Like, chat, I feel like you guys are prosecution witnesses at this point. All right. So, yesterday, Ms. Reed's counsel stated in open court that her defense intends to present evidence that Colin is a third-party culprit who may be criminally responsible for John O'Keefe's death. That was an interesting moment in court. We're not going to watch it because of time constraints. I sort of had to cut down what we're covering today. But they were like, you know, the prosecution's like, defense doesn't even know who their third-party suspects are. And the defense was like, yeah, we do. We'll give you the names. We'll give you the names because, yeah, we do. So, yesterday, Ms. Reed's counsel stated in open court that they intend to present evidence that Colin is the third-party culprit who may be criminally responsible for John O'Keefe's death. The above-referenced facts lead to the inescapable conclusion that your office would be laboring under a flagrant conflict interest. They're missing a word. I got to call them on it. In any investigation of Mr. Albert. Indeed, it is hard to fathom how your office can investigate the alleged criminal activity of Mr. Albert, fully aware that such an investigation may discredit him and his son. At the same time, their credibility is essential to both your prosecution of Ms. Reed and the special prosecutor's cases against Mr. Carney. In these circumstances, if your office investigated Mr. Albert and declined to prosecute, there's a substantial risk that a large segment of Canton residents, Norfolk County residents, and other members of the public, that's me, I'm other members of the public in this. I'm in this letter. I'm other members of the public. You're in this letter too, because you're either Canton residents, Norfolk County residents, or just other members of the public. Would question whether such a decision was made in good faith or whether it was influenced by your office's existing relationship with Mr. Albert and Colin, your antagonistic relationship with Mr. Carney, and your obvious personal and professional interests in seeking Ms. Reed's conviction. Accordingly, I respectfully request that in your capacity of district attorney, you recuse your office from this matter and refer any investigation into Mr. Albert's alleged violations to another county prosecutor. I feel like this is kind of obvious that this is totally a thing. But yes, this is an entirely reasonable letter. And yeah. Oh, there's more. There's more. Julie Blank at Blank. She says, okay, thank you very much for getting back to me. And David Traub says, good afternoon. Chief Rafferty communicated your note of concern to us while we were actively filming the very statement you were suggesting. Please be advised that this statement was also sent to Dateline at NBC, Nightline, and numerous other interested parties not visible in the distribution list below. Press Officer, Director, Office of Norfolk District Attorney Michael W. Morrissey. And they blanked out his cell phone. So, that's a good thing. But they didn't blank out his fax number, which I would say is kind of also a dumb thing. Now, they probably have their fax machine. Because this was put in like a public filing, I am really hoping that they have their fax machine as a virtual fax, which is what virtually all fax machines are now, because almost nobody actually has a fax machine anymore, because why? Having a fax machine is a little bit like having a button hook or a clothes mangle or like, some other old-timey bullshit. But for some reason, courthouses still have fax machines because, yeah. So, but the smart thing to do is to hook up your fax machine as a virtual fax, where it's just, you get a fax and it just creates a PDF, right? That makes sense. But, if they're really dumb, then they might have their fax machine hooked up to a paper printer. And the thing is that if you have your fax machine hooked up to a paper printer, the last thing you want is that fax machine number on the internet. Because what will you get? You will get faxes going, are you out of fax paper? Call us now. And they will send you 80 copies of that. You will get faxes of like random. So the weirdest spam fax I ever got, by the way, when I had a fax number, eventually I just like got rid of my fax number entirely. But the weirdest fax I got that was a spam fax, I got a spam fax for a massage parlor, which had an image that I think was supposed to be sexy. It's just the problem is that any image that you run through a fax machine does not come out as sexy, because it looked like a kind of flirtatious gorilla by the time the fax machine was done with it. It was like this big kind of black blobby shape doing this. And it was like, all right, that's funny. I put it up on my wall for a bit because it was funny as hell. But I mean, the thing is when you're actually paying money to get the like weird flirtatious gorilla, it was like, okay, that's dumb. Now I just, yeah. I don't know. All right. So we have another letter, another Bedro letter. So the fax image rubbed you the wrong way. Kind of. And I see we were at our super chat, so I got to finish this. You can really taste the clam. And I promised I'd crack a beer. I don't know what to do for the next one. Maybe I'll put a goal of Runkle Tangent. I will give you guys a good Runkle Tangent if we hit this goal. The what? It's got clamato. It's made with clam. All right. So let's have a look at another Bedro letter. So March 20th, 2025. Oh, this is the Helena Rafferty letter. So it's not the Bedro letter. District Attorney Morrissey, please be advised a letter dated March 10th, 2025 letter was addressed to me in my capacity as the Chief of Police for the town of Canton from Attorney Mark A. Bedro. As you may know, Attorney Bedro represents Aidan Carney. In his letter, Attorney Bedro requested that the Canton Police Department commence a criminal investigation in connection with an incident that reportedly occurred in town on March 5th or March 4th, 2025. March the 4th be with you. Specifically, Attorney Bedro has formally requested that the CPD commence a criminal investigation into Christopher Albert, Mr. Albert, for alleged violations of the law, interceptions of wire and oral communications. The allegations raised by Attorney Bedro against Mr. Albert concern an incident that reportedly occurred in town on March 4th, 2025. I've attached a copy of Attorney Bedro's letter hereto for your review and reference. We covered that previously, so we're not doing that again. As you know, Mr. Albert currently serves as a member of the Select Board for the town. The Select Board is the appointing authority for my position as the Chief of Police for the CPD. Given the nature of the relationship between my position and the Select Board, I am concerned there may be a potential conflict of interest and possibly an appearance of impropriety. There would be. This is the right move. If I or other members of the CPD were to commence such a criminal investigation into the allegations raised by Mr. Albert. Based on the existence of a potential conflict of interest and to avoid any potential appearance of impropriety, I am respectfully referring Attorney Bedro's request for an investigation to you in your capacity as the District Attorney for Norfolk County or for your referral to another county. The or for your referral to another county to me seems to be like, I know that I have referred this to the most, conflict of interested person I could possibly find on this matter. So, maybe you need to send this somewhere else, right? Maybe you need to send this to someone else. All right. So, let's have a look. We're gonna look at the motions in Karen Reed, but we're gonna take a little bit of a sidetrack, not a goals-based sidetrack, but we're gonna cover something else that happened that I wanted to talk about, and that so many of you have asked me to talk about. Like, all of you have asked me to talk about this. So we're gonna cover it. And hopefully I've switched the audio over properly, but here we go. So this is a dissent. This is a dissenting judgment in the case of Bonta. Now, Bonta is a case about guns. Now, the first thing I want you to notice when you look at this video is this Ninth Circuit Justice's office. Now, first, he has a lovely view. He's got an amazing view. Audio is now quiet. Okay. Let me see if I can turn my audio up there. He's got an amazing view. Awesome view. Second of all, this is actually the first frame of his own video. So, like, some of you are thinking that I did him dirty with this. And I have not done him dirty. Maybe that will fix the audio. I have not done him dirty with this pause. because this is actually his own first, like, this is frame 0. And so him having like the one eye open and the other eye napping, that's his choice. All right, now I'm seeing that it's too loud. I will turn it down a little bit. So, yeah. But this appears to be an AK-47 up on the background. So I'm just going to say nobody should mess with this particular judge, because I feel like this judge will go to town with you. But I also see that it appears that it's got like some sort of brass plaque on it. And, yeah, I don't know. So, it looks like this was like some sort of commemorative, AK-47. Somebody says, this is Photoshop. This is not Photoshop. This is actually the dude's office. And this is not the only gun you're going to see today.
I'm Judge Van Dyke, and welcome to my chambers. I'm making...
All right, can you guys hear that guy's audio as well? Is it too loud, too whatever? Are we good? Hopefully we're good. But yeah, this guy is Judge Van Dyke, and there's welcome to his chambers. There we go.
This video is part of my opinion in the Duncan v. Bonta case. In this case, the state of California made the argument, which the majority has now accepted, that a magazine holding more than 10 rounds is just an accessory, not an arm protected by the...
Captions are not, okay, he's too quiet. Okay, let's turn him up. I've got him at max, but we have a volume booster trick. So we're going to put him up to 294%. That seems like lots. Hopefully that should boost him.
The Second Amendment's right of the people to keep and bear arms.
Better?
I think anyone with a basic familiarity with firearms could show you that this attempted distinction is simply inconsistent with reality.
So the issue is a magazine an arm? And if a magazine, like the the thing that holds the bullets, what goes in your gun, if I'm simplifying it dramatically, if a magazine is an arm, then it's protected by the Second Amendment. If it's not an arm, if it's merely an accessory, then it's not protected by the Second Amendment. So that's the issue here.
I alluded to this during oral argument when I asked California's counsel about the balance of the tests that are proposed for what qualifies as an arm protected by the Second Amendment. Let's go to that exchange now.
Magazine and
Can I ask you a question about that? Because
yes, Your Honor.
So the way you're treating magazines, it seems like you could use the same sort of rationale as between a non-semi-automatic firearm, say a lever action or a bolt action or a revolver type action, and a semi-automatic firearm. So I'm trying to figure out if you're saying, well, what we do is we say, have people ever banned particularly dangerous rounds? And now we're saying large capacity.
I'm just going to stop, and I'm just going to go back to something. I want you to watch in the bottom right corner, because I just learned something about this lawyer right here.
So I'm trying to figure out if you're saying, well, what we do is we say, have people ever banned particularly dangerous?
Did you see what he just did? That's a man who experiences back pain. Yeah, you can see he does the back pain shift.
Well, what we do is we say, have people ever banned particularly dangerous rounds? And now we're saying large capacity magazines are particularly dangerous. Why couldn't that same reasoning be used to ban semi-automatic firearms altogether? To say, because I mean, think about it, like during the Revolutionary War, if the United States had semi-automatic...
Look at the justice next to him. This is not a face of somebody who's like who's totally agreeing with him.
Firearms that only held 5 to 10 rounds, it'd have been about 10 minutes and it would have been over, right? As against muskets. So clearly the semi-automatic mechanism is way, 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 way more particularly dangerous than the difference, the delta between a 10-round magazine and a 15-round magazine. So why does your reasoning not mean that, if this reasoning works, why does your reasoning not mean that a state could just ban the semi-automatic firearms altogether?
So if we're just start talking, Your Honor, about this initial sort of textual question, I think if you're dealing with a semi-automatic, that would fit the definition of an arm.
No, but that semi-automatic could be a revolver. Like it could be, I mean, just like this, that high capacity mag.
Now, normally people don't call revolvers semi-automatic. Yeah. This guy's having a nap. This guy's completely shut down. He's in nap mode. I'm confused. What's the problem with banning semi-automatics? Because semi-automatics should not be banned. They're a really common action.
Magazine could be a lower capacity magazine.
Right, Your Honor. So I think that would fit the definition of arm, and then you'd move on to the other aspects of the Bruin analysis. At stage one, is a particular weapon that's being addressed by the law in the tradition of dangerous and unusual? Is it in common use for self-defense? And we think Heller is clear that has to consider the character as well as the numbers.
I'm not understanding I think I'm missing your response to my, it seems to me that just as you could say, are you saying that yes, so it would be an arm under, you're not conceding that it would be an arm under stage one. So why are you saying it wouldn't be an arm, but the semi-automatic versus revolver, say, distinction is something that we're stuck with? I mean, you would agree that you can't ban the automatic mechanism.
Well, an automatic mechanism, I think that you can ban. I think the Supreme Court has recognized
No,
that
the automatic mechanism is a term that semi-autos and full autos use an automatic mechanism.
Sure, Your Honor. I'm sorry for the confusion. No, I don't.
The problem is that the judge actually knows what he's talking about, and this lawyer doesn't. So let's talk a little bit about, because I saw some commentary about semi-automatics and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about before full auto guns existed, semi-automatic guns were called automatics. And so when you see some guns are called automatic, like they'll be like the whatever automatic, and the what they mean is that it functions to reload the gun, as when you fire. But semi-automatic, so full auto is like a machine gun. You pull the trigger, you hold the trigger, and it keeps firing, right? And so, whereas a semi-automatic, you pull the trigger once, it fires once. If you want to fire again, you have to release the trigger and then pull the trigger again. So it fires once for every time that you pull the trigger. Now, there are some other guns that do fire every time you pull the trigger. Revolvers, but revolvers are not considered an automatic action. They're considered a separate action. They're the revolving action. So that's a different thing. There's also lever action, there's bolt action, there's all sorts of actions. But the thing is the reason why Buddy here in the tie doesn't want to get into this is that the court has already said that semi-automatics are perfectly fine, that semi-automatics cannot be banned because they're protected by the Second Amendment. And so, he's like, well, now when this justice, says automatic action, he's referring to semi-auto and full auto. This guy just thinks he's referring to full auto. So this is where we're getting the distinction here. And this is because you've got a justice who knows more about guns than this guy and his tie put together. Leah Baker says, actions I don't get. Guns are guns. The action is what you have to do to cycle the gun. Now, I can't handle a gun on a live stream. So instead, I'm going to handle something that is perfectly not dangerous. Because I'm not allowed to handle a dangerous object like a gun. So, let's imagine we've got this, and we're going to imagine that this perfectly harmless object is a gun. So, a full auto would be something where you pull the trigger, and it fires continuously, right? So you pull the trigger, and it goes, and it shoots, right? Now, again, this perfectly harmless object that we are now imagining is a gun. I pull the trigger once, and it fires And that's a semi-automatic because then I pull the trigger again and it, so each time you pull the trigger, it shoots once. So, but let's imagine some other different kinds of actions, and I'm going to pantomime our actions because we're pantomiming them. So, a bolt action. I pull the trigger, and then I have to lift the bolt, pull the bolt back, push the bolt, and then pull the trigger again. So the reason why that is different than the automatic action is because the automatic action, I pull the trigger, and then the gun automatically does the things to load another cartridge, right? Whereas the bolt action, I have to take those steps myself. Similarly with a lever action, I pull the trigger, and then I work a lever, and then I can pull the trigger again, right? There's some other actions like brake action, but I can't really show you what a brake action looks like with this perfectly harmless object, because a brake action, I'd have to somehow break this and it doesn't work. So, but yes, given that the court has already held that that semi-autos are fine, this guy is in the danger zone if he starts arguing that they're not. So
think that we could ban all semi-automatic weapons. I think Heller makes that clear. The point I was just making is with respect to accessories, I think we have a difference of opinion where my friends suggest any accessory that is somehow helpful to armed self-defense.
So that's important because your argument turns on whether you can characterize accessory. So you would say that the revolver versus semi-automatic is not an accessory, but that a magazine is this accessory. So what would you think about like a red dot sight, electro-optics, which many firearms are going to electronic optics nowadays. They're obviously an accessory because you could have iron sights. Could you ban those?
Well, so Your Honor, I'm not intimately familiar with that, and I do want to answer.
When he says I'm not intimately familiar with this, what he means is I don't have the faintest clue what you just said, Judge. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm scared, and I'm, He's like, Judge, don't make me pretend to know what I'm talking about here, because, I don't.
This question and make sure that I save time for rebuttal. I think that the question at the outset would be, is that, if it's an accessory, is it within the Teixeira principle that it's...
Now, this guy, just looks like he misjudged a fart. He's got that, like, I really should not have had that curry, kind of expression. This guy has an expression right now of like, did the guy next to me misjudge a fart? That's kind of his expression. And I just got to move myself here so that I can show you her expression, because her expression is like, I cannot believe that I have to listen to this shit. Yeah, we got some facial expressions going on here.
Necessary to the realization of the right to self-defense, and you'd have to build a record and analyze it in that case.
So, counsel, you're saying...
Now, from this exchange, it became clear to me that many, including both California's counsel and my colleagues in the majority in this case, lacked the basic familiarity with firearms to understand the inherent shortcomings and obvious inadmissibility of the test that California was proposing.
He's like, everyone in that room is dumb except me. Yeah, so here we go.
Which the majority in this case has now adopted. I originally planned to explain all of this in writing, in my opinion, and why the argument doesn't make sense, but it occurred to me that in this instance, showing is much more effective than telling. As the old saying goes, a picture is sometimes worth 1,000 words, and here I hope you will agree that a video is at least worth that much. And I suppose at this point in the video is as good a time as any to apologize for any shortcomings of the video. This is the first video like this that I've ever made, and in our digital age, I fear that people have become accustomed to a production quality that I'm sure that I fall far short of. But
first of all, I'm going to say, sir, fuck you, because his production quality is better than mine. I want you to look at the focus on his face, right? And now the focus on my face and the lighting in his video versus the lighting in my video. Sir, shut the up. Like, just shut up. Your production quality is just fine. The only problem you have is that your robe, which isn't your fault, it's just the robe you've got to wear, makes it look like you were a giant man with a tiny, tiny head. And that's not your fault. That's the robe. But no, you've got excellent production quality, sir. And if you ever decide that this judge thing doesn't work out, you can totally move on to like starting up a YouTube channel.
I hope and expect that regardless of any such flaws, this video will still powerfully serve the purpose for which I've made it. I also want to emphasize that for safety purposes, I have rendered inoperable all the guns and gun parts that I use to demonstrate today.
Now, if you're like me and you're watching this, you went, wait, demonstrate? What?
And finally, as an appellate body, it's obviously not our role to make factual determinations, so I share this not to supplement the factual record that we're using to decide this case. Instead, I share this because a rudimentary understanding
of spoilers, by the way, on that.
How guns are made, sold, used, and commonly modified makes obvious why California's proposed test and the one my colleagues are adopting today simply does not work. I'm sure I could explain all of this in writing without being accused of improper fact-finding, but it's obviously much more effective to simply show you. So let's do that.
By the way, he does get accused of improper fact-finding in about 0 seconds because one of the other justices accuses him of precisely that.
Now. Welcome back. To demonstrate, I'm going to start with this SIG P320 that's basically in its stock.
Now, I'm just going to say right now, this justice is the most based justice that I have ever encountered because A, he's got an AR or he's got an AK-47. I'm sure he's got an AR elsewhere, but he's like, let me show you all of my guns. Now, the one thing that I thought was funny is that he picks the P320. The reason why I think it's funny that he picks the P320 is that the P320 right now is a kind of scandal-ridden gun. How do I put this? The allegations that have been leveled against the P320 basically are that it goes off when dropped or bumped or you hiccup at it the wrong way. There's been a bunch of people basically saying, hey, this is a gun that... And it's to a point where people actually laugh at it. And there are some shooting competitions that have said, we will not let you run a P320 at our shooting competition. So, yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is the other thing. In the general population, 99% of the firearms owned are semi-automatic. Most guns are semi-automatic. Yes, this is the famous Sig Sauer problem gun. Now, the thing is guys, the P320 is a great gun, and if you say different, it might randomly go off and shoot you. So, yeah.
Configuration. That is, this gun is basically in the same configuration it would come to you from the manufacturer and be sold to you at a retailer. This is one of the most popular handguns currently on the market in the United States. And so I'm going to use this to point out some of the essential parts of a handgun. These same parts would exist on pretty much every handgun, at least of this semi-automatic type. So let me start by pointing out a few of them. This one comes with a standard 21 round magazine.
Now, I'm just going to cry a little bit in Canadian because in Canada, a handgun is limited to a 10 round magazine. So I'm just going to cry a little wee bit, you know, just like a single tear coming down my, because he's like, a standard 21 round magazine. I'm like, oh, you bastards. Anyway, he put an unloaded magazine in it, so yeah.
Comes from factory just like that. You can buy a similar version that comes with a 17 round magazine that fits flush.
Dude. Why do you do this to me? Why?
And so it comes with 21 or 17 round magazine. It has a standard full-size grip. It has a factory trigger, which has a pull weight of about 7 pounds or so. Has
Factory trigger, by the way, just means this is how it came from the factory. It means it's just this is how, like, he hasn't modified it. If you are like a competition shooter or whatever else, you might tweak your trigger to be lighter, or possibly if you're a police force, you might tweak it to be heavier. But yeah. And you might say, why would a police force tweak it to be heavier when competition shooters tweak it to be lighter? Well, the short answer is police sometimes dumb. And Elf Wiggins says, this is a judge who did not run this great idea past other judges first. The thing is that one of the other judges is like, one of the other judges in their dissent, which we're not going to go over because of time constraints, but one of the other judges says, essentially, I write this dissent, or I write this opinion criticizing the dissent in the hopes that this will not become a thing that that is common. So, yeah.
front and rear iron sights that are used to aim the firearm. It has this little takedown lever, which is small, and you may have trouble seeing it, but we're going to talk about that some later. And that's what you use to remove the slide and disassemble the firearm. And the entire gun is designed around the automatic cycling mechanism. That is,
guys, I so wish that I could pull out a gun right now and walk along with you, but I can't. So, yeah.
when you pull the trigger and fire a round, right when that happens, it automatically will rack the slide back, eject the round, the spent cartridge out of the gun. It will grab a new round out of the magazine, put that round into the chamber, into the barrel, and it'll be ready to fire another round the next time you pull the trigger. So this is a semi-automatic firearm.
Right. That's exact. He's actually given a very good description. You can get more particular if you want. But basically, when you fire, the slide pulls back. The ejector, kicks it out and puts the spent cartridge. The case is pulled out of the thing, and then it's kicked out to the side. And then the action, or the slide, goes forward. It pushes a new cartridge into the chamber. And then once the cycle is completed, it should be, the slide should be fully seated forward, with a case fully, or with a fresh cartridge fully seated. And if you pull the trigger again, it will fire again. That's why they call this an automatic. In this case, semi-automatic means partially automatic, because it is automatic, but it will not fire repeatedly while you pull the trigger. This is a good thing in a handgun, because full auto handguns are a thing, and they are difficult.
Now, I want to use this handgun to illustrate first California and the majority's argument as applied to this obviously typical and very common handgun. And then I want to show you that the same argument would apply to other parts of the firearm and to this firearm as a whole. Now, as a reminder, California's argument, which the majority's adopted here, is that a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds is not an arm protected by the Second Amendment. So this 21 round magazine that comes from the factory, or a 17 round magazine,
Wait, what?
is not an arm protected by the Second.
I think I can show you a 10 round magazine without showing you what it goes with. 10 round magazine for a Glock handgun. So, yep.
Amendment. Now, California acknowledges that a magazine is necessary to make the firearm function, but they argue that because you can replace the standard magazine with one that holds fewer rounds, 10 rounds or less, then these higher capacity magazines are not an arm and thus wholly unprotected by the Second Amendment.
Now, personally, to me, if you're going to protect armaments, you should protect all, like, most of these accessories should also be protected. To me, that includes magazines, that includes suppressors, that includes optics, that includes bipods, that includes all sorts of things. And by the way, for the folks, I got another death threat. I got another, and it's not the guy I did the video about, because if you were watching earlier, I did a video where I noted that somebody had sent me a letter, and here's the letter with this red ink thumbprint. Oh, my nails really badly need cleaning. So, somebody sent me this letter with this red ink thumbprint. Anyway, somebody sent me another death threat. It's not Tican. It's not anybody you know. It's just some dude who's upset that I talk about firearms and whatever else. So yeah, if you're wondering, like, I'm just saying, don't come visiting without an invitation, because yeah. But yeah, I mean, to me, all of these things are arms. So yeah.
Now, the problem with California's argument is that, as I pointed out in oral argument, the exact same argument would apply to essentially every part on this firearm, which would mean that essentially nothing on this firearm would be protected by the Second Amendment. Allow me to illustrate that using this firearm. Now, in oral
So he's basically, the argument that they were saying is that if you can remove something, then it's not an arm, that it's just whatever. And I also saw somebody who was saying, why would you need a 10 round or more than 10 round magazine? That is a good time for a tangent, because I offered a Runkle tangent, so we're going to start a goal for another Runkle tangent. So, let's talk about what happens in a defensive shooting. The last time I called the police about a death threat, they investigated me. So I have given up on calling the police on that, because the police are not super freaking useful. Anyway, why would you need more than a 10-round magazine? Well, because lots of defensive shootings involve more than 10 rounds. And the reason why lots of defensive shootings involve more than 10 rounds is because people under stress suck at everything. Literally every single thing you will suck at. There are some exceptions. If you are in adrenaline, you are better at running away. You will run faster. You will run longer. You will run better in all the ways of running. So adrenaline is great for that. You can punch harder if you are in adrenaline, but you can punch less accurately. Because one of the things adrenaline tends to do is it tends to make you shaky. Stress makes you shaky. And so when we use our perfectly harmless demonstration device, if I am facing a, something and I'm calm, I'm probably just calmly sighting down, just like, hey, buddy, right? If I'm like deer hunting, and for some reason I'm calm when I'm doing it, because I am not calm when I'm deer hunting. I am like, oh, now is the moment when I need to not fuck up, which is the absence of calm. But let's say I'm super calm. I'm shooting a target. I'm shooting paper. I'm like, hey, piece of paper. Hey there. And I can just do a nice, gentle trigger squeeze, right? And keep the gun nice and steady. But let's say I have just been woken up by somebody who has broken in. And now I'm like, hey, man, get out of my house, right? And the gun. And so the thing is that people are shitty shots. There are a large number of police interactions here in Canada where the police have fired a full magazine. Like 18 rounds of out of their handgun, and they hit 0 times. 0 times. And that's with 18 rounds, right? So Why do you need it? Well, because you might not actually be good at it, especially if you are in a civilian in a defensive shooting. Lots of people need more rounds. Now, that is for defensive use, right? Which is part of what the Second Amendment is for. There are other circumstances in defensive use that might come up. For instance, one of my friends, when I was growing up, this was when I was an early adult, she told me about a defensive gun use that she had. Now, she didn't actually pull the trigger at all. She indicated she had a gun, she pulled the gun, and people fucked off. But there were 4 of them. It was her against 4 dudes. And she was rocking a revolver. Now, I'm just thinking, you got a revolver with 6 rounds. There's 4 of them. You better be really freaking confident about how you're doing on that. Because 4 of them, right? You don't get many misses before you got more bad guys than you've got ammunition. The other thing is that people don't go down like you expect. Because one of the things that's really, really common is you'll see police shootings and there'll be like 4 cops. Each cop fires 18 rounds. They hit the guy 8 times out of 4 times 18. I'm not lawyer mathing this. You can do that yourself. You're better at it than I am. But the guy gets hit 8 times. And what does he do? He says something like, why'd you shoot me? And then just goes, I'm going to walk over there. I'm going to sit for a minute. And he sits for a minute and he takes like 5 minutes to die. I have seen police officers magazine dump into a guy who was charging them and get stabbed because the guy got shot like 10 times and still had enough oomph to go stabby, stabby. And then the cop goes to the hospital and the guy with the knife dies on the ground there. By the way, just so you're aware, if you get into a knife fight with a cop, when the ambulance comes and they're like, we got 1 space here, they're putting the cop in the ambulance, not you, right? So, there's lots of reasons. But for competition shooting, you may want more rounds because more rounds means less reloading. Reloading, sucks up time. Yeah, it's a whole thing. All right, and the 30-foot rule is a thing, and it isn't. I don't want to get into that rant unless you guys... Maybe we could make the 30-foot rule for my next tangent, but let's get back to the video here.
Argument. I asked California's counsel if their argument meant that the sights on this firearm are not protected by the Second Amendment. And part of the reason I'm making this video is because it didn't appear that counsel understood what I was asking. So take a look again at this handgun. What you see on here are iron sights. You have a front and a rear iron sight. And the way that you fire this handgun...
Okay, let's talk about iron sights. Iron sights are the most basic version, or most basic sort of sights. And they're called iron sights because they are literally just metal, right? They're literally just bits of metal. And so the way iron sights work, and I'm going to try to do this so it works for you, is you've got 2 back posts, and then you've got a front post. And what you want to do is you want to line up your front post so it is midway between the 2 front posts and lined up. Right? Now, I'm having trouble keeping my hand steady because I'm doing this in a reflected thing. So, that's kind of what you're looking for, right? Now, they're called iron sights even though they might be made of, like, plastic or might be made of whatever, but yes. So that is how iron sights work. They're just basic sights. They don't have any glass. They don't have any, They don't have anything fancy. They don't take batteries. So the advantage of iron sights is iron sights always work. So the disadvantage of iron sights is that they kind of suck. Give me a red dot any time of day, because a red dot gives you a big light. It gives you a big red dot. And so let's imagine this is our red dot. And how does the red dot work? Well, you take the red dot and you put it on the dude, and then you pull the trigger, and the dude gets, that's it. So, yeah. Red dots are fast. They're a lot easier. Yeah. So anyway, what he's going to tell us is that you could take off the sights.
Gun, the way you aim it is you take and you line up these two sights and you line them up on what you want to shoot at, and that's how you hit what you're aiming at with this firearm. These are iron sights. They're probably the most common sighting system for a handgun.
No, we're going back to Karen Reed after this.
All you have to do on this particular handgun to change out the sights is remove two screws in this slide right here, and the back sight comes off. And when you do that, you can put the two screws back into a red dot optic, and now you will have a firearm instead of having a sighting system for a handgun.
We're going to go back here.
But all you have to do on this particular handgun to change out the sights is remove two screws in this slide right here, and the back sight comes off. And when you do that, you can put the two screws back into a red dot optic, and now you will have a firearm that instead of having iron sights would have a red dot optic.
If you're wondering why he's not taking the sights off, it's because if he takes the sights off, he's going to have to re-zero his gun, and he doesn't want to do that because that's a pain in the ass. So, but he's demonstrating that.
Let me illustrate that by just taking a slide where I've already installed the red dot optic, and here you go. See, so now you have this back iron sight's been taken off, and here's a red dot optic. Now, in a hands-on experienced shooter, this red dot optic allows you to shoot the firearm more quickly, to get on target more quickly, to hit what you're aiming at, be more accurate. And so it's obviously...
The red dot is better in every way, basically. That's it.
Much more dangerous if it's being used for an unlawful or wrong purpose. But if it's being used for a lawful purpose, then it makes the firearm better for that intended purpose. So this firearm would be better for self-defense or competition, recreational shooting, or
every single thing on the planet. It's better just in every respect, right?
Hunting. And indeed, my own self-defense handgun, which this is another P320 that's been configured slightly differently, has a red dot optic precisely because it makes the firearm better for its intended purpose. That is,
sir, can I recommend that you ditch the P320 that you use for self-defense and replace it with like a P365? Yeah. And I think I have to roll a thing. Marvin CZ saying you should have more than 10 rounds, especially for protecting a shop or home. Absolutely. Yeah, the P365 does not have reports of the same problems that the 320 does. And play.
Self-defense, it makes it more accurate more quickly and shoot more quickly. Now, so in that sense, this red dot optic is just like this magazine. It makes the firearm more dangerous when it's misused, but it also makes the firearm work better for its intended purpose when it's used
because
properly.
It works better for every purpose.
Well, you may think that's pretty intuitive about the sighting system for a firearm, but the same thing is true about basically every part of this gun. Let's take a look at a part that's maybe a little less intuitive, which is that takedown lever that I talked about earlier.
So this guy is using the wrong gun for this. The gun he should be using is not the P320. The gun he should be using is the Ruger 1022. Ruger makes a gun. It's a very popular gun. It's a semi-automatic 22 caliber. I own one. They're great. But the thing is that so many aftermarket parts are made for the 1022 because it's such a great gun. And what is it? Joel, we're going to get to your comment in a minute, and prepare yourself. So, it's a great gun, but the thing is you will find people who have replaced all of these different components such that they buy a Ruger 1022, and the only thing left that is like Ruger part is something like a spring. It is entirely possible to buy a Ruger 1022 and replace every single part with an aftermarket part and have no Ruger parts left on it. My Ruger 1022, I have replaced the extraction lever, and it's vastly better. Now, let's get to Joel's comment. Why is it that people obsessed with guns are the weaklings who have a massive need to compensate? Joel, congratulations. Here's the thing. You are a dick, and I will explain to you why you are a dick. Because self-defense should not only be for the strong. Self-defense should not only be for the mighty. If you are a person who is 6'6" and 180 pounds, well, grandma should still have the right to defend herself against you. Even if she is, 90 pounds and not physically able. So, yeah, guns do a wonderful thing that they make it possible for the weak to defend themselves against the physically strong. They make it possible for a 90-pound woman to defend herself against a 150-pound rapist. And I personally think that is a good thing rather than the rapist getting to succeed. I think it's okay if that woman walks away unassaulted and the attacker does not. So when you're saying the weaklings, aren't we supposed to protect the weak? Aren't we supposed to look out for the weak? Shouldn't we have regard for the weak? Absolutely, guns are for weaklings, and we should fucking celebrate that, Joel. Joel, you are exactly right, and so close to getting there, because your answer to saying, oh my God, these are for weaklings, is to say that the weak should be subject to the predations of the physically strong because you don't like guns. Joel, you are wrong, and God, I hope you learn something, because this is the entire point of society, is to protect the weak from the strong. Sure, Lord Humongous does great in, the whole Mad Max apocalypse, but the whole point is that the people who are good people, who are not, Lord Humongous, should also be able to thrive and to survive and to be okay. So, yes, Joel, you've identified the fucking point. Thank you. And Joel, just tell me that you don't think somebody in a wheelchair should be able to defend themselves. And I will say you are wrong every day of the week. I'm guessing we're probably going to see crickets, but yeah. I also saw Villanova Law. You're getting to my criticism. So you're not wrong, Villanova Law. You and I have had disagreements in the past, but you're not wrong, and we're going to get to it. So, yeah, carrying on here.
This little piece here is necessary for the operation of the firearm. It's a tiny little piece that you need to have for the firearm. And so you would think, well, since it's necessary, then it must be an arm protected by the Second Amendment. But not under California's logic in this case. See, you can replace this factory takedown lever with a different factory takedown lever. This one's called a gas pedal. And when you do that, you replace it, you put the slide back on. Now the firearm is a lot more controllable under recoil. You can, just like with the red dot sight, you can do faster follow-up shots. You can aim the gun more quickly, and you can control it better. So again, as with the red dot sight, as with the higher capacity magazine, this particular takedown lever makes the gun more dangerous when it's misused, but also makes the gun more effective for its intended purpose.
Basically, anything that makes the gun better is going to make it better for both, you know, misuse and for its intended self-defense use, right? Especially given that these are self-defense firearms.
When it's used properly. So under California's logic, because this is an accessory, this little takedown lever, it could be replaced with a worse part. This little takedown lever is not protected. It's not part of the arm protected by the Second Amendment. Well, you might ask yourself, well, what about the grip? Like, you think this grip, certainly it must be part of the arm. I mean, it seems like that's a pretty key part of a firearm, is the grip of a pistol. Well, actually, under the majority's argument, it would not be protected. And the reason is, here's a bunch of grips that I've accumulated over the years.
Okay, I really kind of like the bag o frames that he's got there.
I'm just going to pull a couple out here. This is a nice small grip, a nice small light grip. This is a big heavy grip. So what you can do on this firearm is you can remove the slide, remove that takedown lever, take what's called the fire control unit out of the firearm. This is actually the firearm under the ATF's definition. And you can take this fire control lever and you can put it inside this smaller grip. And you could use this grip for, say, self-defense purposes, because it's very concealable, it's light, it's easy to carry. And indeed, you'll see that's pretty much the type of grip that I have on my self-defense firearm. Or you could take this much heavier grip with aggressive stippling on it and with a flared mag well, and you could put this fire control unit in there, put the takedown lever on, and then
Chat, how many guns do you think he's got under his robe right now?
and you put the slide back on, and now you have a firearm that is much better at being able to take quick follow-up shots, hit what you're aiming at. And so this grip, all of these grips under the majority in California's logic, could be banned because if they were misused, they would make the firearm more dangerous, and you could put a different type of grip on if you wanted to. So you might ask yourself, well, what part of this pistol would be protected as an arm under the majority's logic? Well, I suppose California would eventually be forced to say, well, this part, the FCU, I guess, is the arm protected by the Second Amendment. Every other part that you added, as I've just shown you, every other part that you added could easily be characterized, just like the magazine, as an accessory that you add to the firearm, and therefore could be banned under the Second Amendment. But not so fast. Even this part, the FCU, the core basic part of the firearm, could be banned under the majority's rationale. And the reason is, let me show you another FCU. This is the FCU for my competition gun. It has a really nice trigger, a nice light, crisp trigger.
Did you notice that he just dropped that he has a competition gun? Yeah, that's just a whole thing.
And has some parts replaced in here. It makes for a really nice trigger. You can upgrade the trigger to make it much nicer. And so because of that, under the majority's logic, you could even ban this FCU, or at least most of it, as simply an accessory, and now protected by the Second Amendment. Now, most of what I've shown you could, I suppose, be conceptualized as upgrades. You say, well, that's an upgraded trigger, and that's an upgraded takedown lever, and that's an upgraded grip.
He's just casually reassembling.
The majority's logic works both ways. I've just shown you how you could easily improve the sights, how you could easily improve the takedown lever, you can improve the grip and the trigger, you could do the same thing with the barrel. But you could easily downgrade all of these factory parts of the handgun to make the firearm less accurate and slower.
He's like, you could make a shittier gun if you wanted to.
You could put in worse than factory trigger. You could require worse sights than what it comes with from the factory. You could require a grip be put on that hurts the speed and accuracy. Indeed, this type of downgrade is precisely what the majority is actually requiring in this case. As we mentioned earlier, this comes from the factory with a 21 round magazine, or it comes with a 17 round magazine in a slightly different configuration. But the majority is requiring that these factory standard parts be replaced with worse than factory parts, a 10 round magazine. So when we take everything off that the majority might call it accessory, what we're left with at best is this fire control unit. And as I've explained, even that could be dumbed down so that much of this fire control unit would be an accessory under California's argument. And of course,
now I'm just wondering, is he going to pull out a Glock switch at this point, or no?
you can't shoot this, right? It's inoperable. You need all the other accessories that I've been describing in order to make this work as a firearm. But of course, also, each of these other pieces, just like this magazine, could in some way be considered an accessory, since they could be replaced with a different part that would be less useful and make the gun less dangerous if misused. And that could be said for pretty much every single part of this handgun. And the same problem with the majority's argument applies to other aspects of the firearm that are less easily shown in the video, including fundamental aspects of how this firearm operates. At oral argument, I asked California's counsel why California couldn't ban the automatic cycling mechanism altogether under the California's argument. And again, I don't think he understood what I was talking about. Well, this handgun uses that mechanism. This uses the automatic.
You already told us this,
mechanism.
Judge.
And this semi-automatic auto-loading operation is the most popular mechanism that exists today and is used for self-defense. But other mechanisms exist for handguns, including probably most obviously the revolver.
Okay, he's going to a
mechanism.
revolver.
Here's a
All
revolver.
right.
Think of the 6-shooter from the old Western movies, right? You can have a revolver which is not automatic, or you could have, and there's different types of revolvers. There's single shots, there's double actions. You could have the lever action, you could have a pump action, you could have a single shot break action, which only has one round. You have to open it up and manually take the round out and put another in. And under California's argument, because any of these single types of mechanisms are not essential to make this handgun work, and thus, or make a handgun work, and thus are not an arm under the Second Amendment, California could ban the whole semi-automatic mechanism altogether, thereby effectively banning semi-automatic handguns altogether.
Meanwhile, California's sitting there like, it's like the heavy breathing meme. So yeah, California wants to do that. So, yes, he's got little display stands for his guns. Absolutely, he does. Yep. Hey, David, good to see you.
To use revolvers or single-shot handguns or worse, and of course with bad sights, crazy heavy trigger pulls, a terrible grip. You get the point. Ultimately, California's argument, which the majority has unwisely adopted here, is based on the unstated assumption that there's some basic, I guess, unadorned, without any accessories firearm that would be protected as an arm under the text of the Second Amendment, but everything else is merely an unprotected accessory that's been added to that firearm that's unprotected.
God, I want to find out if this judge has more guns than me. So, yeah.
I hope you can tell from this video that that idea is simply unrealistic. It could never be applied in real life. Like many of this court's ideas about the Second Amendment, it stems from a basic misunderstanding of how firearms work, combined with a highly unrealistic idea of how such a rule would be administered in real life.
Joan, are you referring to the judge or to me before I respond to this? Because we will, yes.
Ultimately, the only rule that makes sense and comports with reality and the text of the Constitution is that the entire handgun here, including the grip, this takedown lever, the slide and barrel, the sighting system, and this magazine are all part of the arm within the meaning of the Second Amendment. Thank you for watching.
Okay, so that's his video. Now you're probably going to say, Runkle, how much do you love this? Not much. Joan says, you, Runkle, ha. No, Joan, I did not go to a high school with you. And the reason why I know this is that the high school where I went had the big buses. And so you went to a different high school. And good try, though. So, here's the thing. I do not love this. I actually think that this is a really bad idea. The guy notes that he should maybe, or he's like, I could have done this as a written opinion. And it's like, yes, you absolutely should have, because this demo, none of this demo was in evidence. This demo would have been an excellent thing for somebody to call as evidence and for them to tender as evidence, but they didn't tender it as evidence. Instead, they just, the judge is doing it in chambers. The judge is basically saying, I am an expert witness, and yeah, I don't love that. As much as I like that he likes guns and knows guns and so forth, and I would totally love to spend an evening at the range with this judge, this video should not have been made. And I feel like he kind of opens himself up to problems going forward. So I kind of have an issue with this one, and yeah. Can I quickly explain the underlying case? This was a challenge against California's magazine bans, basically restricting magazines to smaller capacity magazines. And so California's argument is, we're not banning arms, we are instead banning AG. That's a fair criticism. I agree. We're instead banning accessories. And so, yeah. AG, you're right about the criticism. That was unfair. I hope people don't take it too seriously. It was in the light of the of mockery of that person. But you're quite right. I will retract that comment, because yeah. Here is the problem that we have. Here is the issue. Guys, I agree. Here's the issue that we have here, which is that some of this stuff should be basic knowledge if you're going to deal with a gun case. And so the problem that we have is that because there's such a huge disparity of knowledge on firearm stuff, such that for some people, for the gun owning public, a lot of this stuff is really basic shit, right? A lot of this stuff is basic stuff in the sense of, let's imagine you had never driven a car, and let's imagine you'd never ridden in a car. Let's imagine you'd never been in a car, right? You'd only ever seen cars in movies. Well, you might not understand things about cars, right? You might not understand things like, if somebody said, listen, we need to ban cars that have this button, and the button shows 3 red wavy lines, you might go, oh yeah, that does look like a very dangerous button. And it's the defrost button, right? And you're like, okay, well, maybe the defrost button isn't a super dangerous thing, right? So the problem that you get into with all of this is, whenever I go and deal with a gun case, I end up having to explain very, very basic things. And I have had, there's a case out there, where quite literally, I brought out the, so they tendered this police officer as an expert. And they said, listen, this guy is an expert on guns. And this guy had served in the Canadian military as an armorer. An armorer being the gun guy, right? That's it. He and I had to school this officer because that was my job. Now, this officer was put into a difficult place, right? This officer was put into a difficult scenario because he never asked to be an expert. He was just thrown into this by a prosecutor who didn't do his freaking job. So this officer, I got nothing but respect for this officer because he testified honestly. He testified to what he knew, and he 100% me in this, like, this cop is cool, right? I got no problem with that. So, but, like, I asked him some questions that were kind of basic questions. I asked him questions like, hey, one of these guns that's in this courtroom is a Browning firearm. What was the name of the inventor of the Browning firearms? Like, what is Browning, that company, who was it named for? And he's like, I don't know. And it's like, well, these are basic questions because any gun owner, like just about anybody you run into at a range and you ask, hey, who was the guy who invented, like, the Browning? It was like John Moses Browning. They got that, right? Because the guy is super, super whatever. Like, hey, can you name another firearm that Browning invented? Because Browning invented like a freak ton of guns. And he's like, I don't know. And it's like, well, lots of people would know that. You should know that, sir, right? This is kind of a whole thing. So there's this giant disparity of knowledge where what feels like basic knowledge to one group is completely unknown to the other group. And the other issue you will run into is that people who don't know guns think that they know a lot about guns. So there's a lot of people who just have absolutely no knowledge of firearms, other than that they've seen a movie, they've seen whatever, and they think they know every goddamn thing on the planet. And a lot of these people are judges. Let me find a decision for you. And I'm going to criticize this gently because this is a decision where I appeared as I was one of the litigants. So I'm going to criticize it gently because it's a whole thing there. So let me just find it here. I'm on Canly. Where is it? All right. So I just got to find this case. And yeah, they, let's see, they put this one as Runkle, but others are not Runkle. Here we go. It's put down as Philippi. So, and I'm just trying to find the relevant section here. All right. Here we go. Let's embiggen. So, they note, and this is the case that's going to the Supreme Court, by the way. They just note here. They talk about this gun belonging to a Mr. Swanson. And it is a Smith & Wesson firearm. And they note, in Ms. McCabe's affidavit of April 22nd, 2021, She attaches excerpts from the CFIs of each of the applicant's firearms. Those excerpts are attached as Exhibit B to her affidavit. In the extract, Mr. Swanson's firearm is more fully described as being a Smith & Wesson semi-automatic rifle, model M&P 15 VTAC. I note that the excerpt for CFIs also describes the firearm as restricted and a known firearm. The classification regulations amend the former classification regulations by adding, prescribed as prohibited, the firearms of the design commonly known as the M16, the AR-10, and the AR-15, and the M4 carbine, and any variants or modified versions of them. Section 87 of the classification regulations then lists about 950 different models of those types of firearms. And several sections are all Smith & Wesson M&P firearms. The M&P 15T, M&P 15, M&P 1522, M&P 15FT, M&P 1522 PC, M&P 15 Magpul, M&P 10, M&P 15A, M&P 15 PC, M&P 15 OR, M&P 15 PS, M&P 10 Creedmoor, and M&P 15I. So he says basically, I have no evidence before me that any of the applicants that the firearm has been misidentified as a prescribed firearm or variant by the registrar. Looking at the classification regulation entries cited above, which are very similar to the make and model of Mr. Swanson's, and in the absence of any evidence from him that his firearm has been incorrectly identified as a variant, I am profoundly skeptical that Mr. Swanson could be under any misapprehension about why his firearm is identified as a variant. Okay. Let me talk about why this reasoning is bad. So, the Glock 17 and the Glock 18 and our handguns. They are handguns. They go pew. But you know what the Glock 1 is and the Glock 2 and the Glock 3? They're things like curtain rods and doorknobs and so forth. Why? Because the model number, like Glock model number, doesn't tell you shit about the gun. And there's plenty of circumstances where like a slight difference in the model number is actually a huge difference in what the item is. So, if somebody says they went to Glock and they bought something, they might have bought a handgun because Glock sells a lot of handguns. But it also might have been a little white pipette full of liquid that you should not drink, because Glock also sells something else. So the judge just decided that these things must be similar, but the judge doesn't actually know that. And this is a problem with the judge actually, the judge just inferring this from their knowledge, but not actually knowing it. And this is actually a subject on which there should be expert knowledge. By the way, if you're wondering why Glock sells horse liquids as well as guns, the answer is that Gaston Glock, the famous gun manufacturer, married a woman who really likes horses. And so he got into a side business. It just is a thing. Somebody says, someone has been watching Brandon. No, this is a joke for, this has been a thing in the gun community. By the way, at this most recent SHOT Show, somebody got banned from SHOT Show for holding up a Glock other product related sign. What is the horse liquid? Glock does like horse reproductive technology. So yeah, just so you know, that is a whole other thing that Glock does. So but this judge should not have been venturing into doing a demonstration like this. The judge should have just written down something like, you know, any part of the gun could theoretically be replaced with another part. And, yeah. I don't understand. Please explain fully. When a mama horse and a daddy horse really like each other, the liquid that they trade is what Glock sells. So, yeah. All right, let's get back to Karen Reed here. We'll cover some super chats first, and then we'll get back to Karen Reed, and then we'll wrap up. Patty Hoffman, 99 bottles of beer on the wall. That's an old super chat, because otherwise there would have been something else there. Joy W for a not lucky beer. I've got now a dad's root beer. Diane G cracking a mug of cold Bushmills. Good stuff. Vomit Fountain says, hoist a beer for all of us this Monday, please. I'll have a lucky. Fiona W says, enjoy. Thank you. Red Penetrometer, my new name because you and Rob lolled so hard at the word. And you've got a pen there. That is awesome. Greg, not sure if you have it, but Exhibit A is an actual copy of the email. We went over it. And yes, Gen V, this town is afraid of these popular people. It's a weird town. Jill Higgins, not that Higgins, by the way. And Morrissey has been elected to the DA's office since 2010. Imagine all the corruption that has happened in that time. I think it probably predates him. Alan Mueller, so the fax image rubbed you the wrong way. Alan. Chop trials, butt dialers have real fax machines. Heard from a friend. Corey Cass, so you're saying we should send massage faxes? No, I'm not saying that. Steve A, 2 sheets of paper, feed into fax, tape ends together in a loop, hit send. This is the fax that never ends. Don't do that either. Mispronounced name, Super Sugar Baby Tangent. Thank you so much. Vomit Fountain, how can we resist a tangent? I feel like we like tangents here. Kathleen Harrington, Salem, Massachusetts. That's Julia's in Julie Albert. Apparently it's not. I don't know. Jin VR, I'm all ears. Spill the beans. Beans spilled. Chris Mullen, we love a Runkle tangent. Thank you. I talk about Bruno. Love your channel, Ian. Thank you. Thank you so much. One Lost Dakota. Is that Judge Runkleism? Lol. Thank you. Phoenix Pod just joined at 1.5 speed and letting Ian know through Super Chats since he said he hates Super Chats. Grr. Arg. Florida Dad, the A in 45 ACP, that's a caliber, still means automatic. Yep. Jamie F, love Runkle tangents for the goal. Thank you so much. Dina Kawaji, thank you. Claude Simeon, God damn it, every time I try not to give you money, you pull out a sword as a gun analog, and I can't help it. Thank you. Jin VR, let's just ban dumb lawyers. But then the courthouses would be empty. I want to still keep practicing. JJ with a dog. Genuine question. How does the U.S. fix school shootings besides gun bans? You've changed my opinion on guns bans since watching, but I'm still scared for my students. The vast majority of it is the drug trade, and a lot of that comes down to poverty. Thilo Agthe, here in New Jersey, we're also limited to 10-round magazines. I'm sorry. I know how much that sucks. Patty Jock, thank you for the membership for 22 months. Gwynny Bly, hope cease and desist guy doesn't go rabbit on you too. He will. He will. That's going to happen. That's going to be content though. H Scorpio, handgun rounds are not good at incapacitating. Depends on the round, but yes. Rainman, coyotes can run in packs of more than 5 or 10. That is also true. Raleigh says to celebrate the Roberto from Futurama imitation. Thank you. Vomit Fountain, let's get to an 100th tangent. They're always a good time. Thank you. Victor Man, red dot versus green dot. I like a green dot for everything except grass. Grass is not the best for them, but I do like a green dot, and they're not bad in grass. They're just not great. Jill Higgins, recently got my license to carry here in Massachusetts. Never fired a gun. That'll be the next thing to fix. You want to get some practice time. But why would that ever be required to carry one? Massachusetts is a really interesting state. Get some practice time in because you're going to want to be familiar with it and practiced and so forth. Villanova law is not wrong. This guy, what an idiot. I would probably leave out the what an idiot. How are you going to act like the expert and cite things not in the record? I actually do think he's creating problems for himself here. I don't like this as a strategy. I love the video. I don't like it legally. Michelle Curl, thank you so much. Elf Wiggins, thank you for the heart there. Much appreciated. Jada Juror, thank you so much. Annabelle Feinstein, thanks for sticking up for those of us with handicaps. I feel like I kind of undid some of that later with a poor choice of joke, but it is what it is. I do think that people should be able to defend themselves, like 100%. So yeah. Chelsea Rama, excellent rant. This weakling with a gun appreciates it. Motion for t-shirts. I could do that. Maddie B, what level of fear, nervousness is needed with guns? You should always treat them with respect. You should always treat them with regard, because they are potentially lethal. In the same way that you should always treat a chainsaw with respect. You should always treat any of these things with due respect and with due caution. But that doesn't mean fear, right? That doesn't mean that you should be afraid of it. It just means that you should be aware of it, right? In the same way that you do plenty of things every day that you that are dangerous, right? When you get into a car, right? Lots more people die from vehicle accidents than ever do from shooting deaths. But do you think about it when you get into a car? Do you think about it and you go, I could die doing this, right? And you should, right? You should. I have refused to get into a car. If you've had like 2 beer, if you've had, if you haven't slept enough. I've had a moment when I was driving in a car and I pulled over and I was like, I am too tired to be driving. I need to get off the road because I am too tired. It is not a good thing. If you like chainsaws are stupid dangerous, but just think, if you pick up a chainsaw, make sure you're wearing the chaps, make sure you're wearing the build, hat, make sure you're wearing all of those things, because, if you don't respect it, then you can get messed up by it. So, when I'm going out shooting and like doing a shooting competition, I'm running around with guns, but I can tell you, I always am careful. I'm always aware of what I'm doing, because it could really mess you up. Carolyn Curley, respect but do not fear firearms. Yep. Ian BPPK, independent judge who don't need no bailiff. I doubt they let him carry in court, but I might be wrong. H. Scorpio says, I want to hear what this judge thinks of the glong. For the people who don't know what the glong is, the glong is a Glock that is also a bong. And I kind of want one, but I will need to get some permissions first. Yellow Pill NP, friend of mine kept 3 grown men from breaking into her home and harming her or her 3 children by using a gun. Her husband works nights. She only had to shoot once, which killed 1 and deterred the other 2 from entering. I'm sorry she had to go through that, but I'm happy that she, that she didn't have to deal with 3 grown men attacking her. Froggy Girl, love a Runkle rant. Let's go. Cheers. Teresa C, I've learned more about guns. Thanks for going through this video. Knowledge is power. Absolutely. Catherine Fraser, I have a personal milestone tomorrow, 65 rotations. Happy birthday, Catherine. Congratulations. Rob Price, speaking of police encounters, I had one today. I had to file a police report because someone tried to steal one of my vehicles and destroyed the steering column. Oh, geez, that sucks. Sorry, Rob. Megan says, really enjoying the Runkle rants today. Thank you. Rainman says, I was an armorer in the Canadian Forces, then went on to engineering role at the National Defense Contractor. I wouldn't offer myself as an expert. To the fairness of the officer, he didn't want to be there as an expert either. The prosecutor just tried to throw him up there. So, yeah. Zoe S17 Kahala. Okay, but I wonder if the firearm is only serialized as a whole and I can replace every piece of the firearm. Then I query when I do, or when do I have 2 or more if I have all the pieces but they're not assembled? In Canadian law, it would be that if you've got all the pieces and they can be readily assembled, then it still counts as a gun. Devious says, if a judge doesn't know about guns during a case about guns, can they do outside research? No. It's got to be within the case. Or are they limited to presented evidence? Limited to presented evidence. Is it different at different court levels, district versus appeals versus supreme? It's got to be evidence on the record. They're not supposed to do independent research, even with their own stuff. AG says, not starting a fight or trolling. Curious what your response to folks who argue more guns are used in crime than self-defense. I know the data is spotty, but I'm curious about your response specifically. So the data isn't so much spotty as it is corrupt. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people, a lot of the people in the field, and I mean this criticism to like both the pro-gun and the anti-gun side, a lot of the people in the firearm research sphere are doing research to generate information that they want. And one of the critical things you will see on there's a particular subgroup of people who will talk about like, they'll say, you know, more guns are used criminally than are used in defensive stuff. And the thing is what they will specifically do is they very intentionally undercount the defensive uses. And what I mean by that is that they know that the most common defensive use of a gun is to just show that you have a gun. And be like, I got a gun. Because like somebody going like, hey, give me your wallet. And you're like, I got a gun. They're like, no, man, it's cool. You keep your wallet. That's a defensive gun use, right? That is you defended yourself with a gun. But they say, oh, we want to keep that out. Because how do we know that's and you'll see them like pare down the number of defensive gun uses to basically say, well, it only counts if you actually shoot somebody. And I'm like, but that is the very smallest amount of defensive gun uses is the ones where there's actual shooting, right? And so when you do that, you basically cook your data in a way that generates the response you want. And that's exactly it. They want to show that there's more criminal use than defensive use. So they're just like, well, we're just not going to count all of that, right? So the thing you have to be able to be good at doing is you have to realize that these stats are only as good as the inputs, right? And the inputs are, and this is, do they only count crimes where they were shooting? No, they count crimes where it was any crime. So no. So the problem that you get with a lot of this stuff is that you have to be really good at understanding research design, and you have to be really good at understanding the sort of ways you can fuck with research design, because if you want to do bad research, you can do that. So you have to be like, and the thing is I find that most of those studies you just have to throw out. Most of them are not good at all. So it's a problem. It just is what it is, right? You'll see things where they'll talk about like, X many school shootings. Well, most of those numbers that you'll see are intentionally cooked. And what I mean by that is that they'll describe something as a school shooting if it happens on school grounds, notwithstanding the fact that it happens at like midnight when the school is not open. They will call it a school shooting if it happens near a school when it isn't at the school. They will call things a school shooting when it's with like a paintball gun or an airsoft gun or whatever else. And so, and the thing is that most of the school shootings that they talk about in those numbers when they say, oh, there's a school shooting every day, are not actually what you think of, because you're thinking of things like Uvalde. And they're thinking of things like a block away from a school, a gangster shot another gangster. And that's not what you were thinking when you heard school shooting, right? So they give you a number that's like super high, and the number is almost entirely it's almost entirely stuff that you wouldn't include if you were asked what is and isn't a school shooting, right? So yeah. Laura M says, love your uncle, but this is sounding conspiracy theorist with nothing backing up. Laura, you'll have to do your own research on this one, but if you actually look at their data on what they count as a school shooting, they count everything, and so much of it is stuff you wouldn't count as a school shooting. So much of it is stuff that you would not include because it was like not on school grounds, not when school is open, not anything. Yeah. In Canada, we had a similar thing where they were talking about just how many children are injured in shootings. And then when you look at it, the number of children who were injured in those shootings, you looked at what they were injured with, and it was BB guns. Not firearms, it was BB guns. And yeah, yes, this is a dad's root beer. Laura, I note you're saying it's the first time I'm hearing this. I get that it's the first time. You should look into it. Go into those sites and break it down and look at what they're actually talking about. And Glass Onion says, what's your point? They're still happening and it's unacceptable. They're not what you'd count as a school shooting. And the thing is that they're mostly like people who are heavily involved in crime. That's really what it comes down to. It's mostly people who are heavily involved in crime and who are, shooting each other, not on schools. Gray Space, guns are still the #1 cause of death for children in America, Runkle. They are not, actually. That is not true. And why is it not true? Why have you heard this stat when it's not true? If you look at those studies that show guns are the #1 cause of death, they're the #1 cause of death after you exclude 3 or 4 other causes of death that actually occur at a higher rate than guns. And so basically they are the #1 cause of death, except for the other several causes of death that are higher than it. So, it's a bogus stat. It's a cooked stat. And all of these, like a lot of these stats that you're seeing are stats that are just intended for, they're intended for all of this stuff. And yeah, Laura, I'm not judging you on all of this. I'm just saying you've got to actually, whenever you see a stat that pisses you off, and I mean, not just on guns, I mean on everything, and not just pisses you off in the sense of like, I hate this stat, but pisses you off also in the sense of like, how has nobody done anything about this? Like, this is a big deal. This is a big issue and somebody's got to do something about this. Like when you see a stat that makes you go, oh my God, you need to find the research paper and you need to break it down and you need to understand this research paper because you need to actually understand what this stat means. So many of these stats have massive problems with them. And this is a fundamental and important skill for just surviving society. I saw in the chat, somebody has an example of, like, you'll see 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste. And you might say, how is it that like every toothpaste on the market is recommended by 9 out of 10 dentists? Well, it's easy. They get 10 dentists and they say, here's a toothpaste. Would you recommend people use this toothpaste? And the dentist goes and they pick up the toothpaste and they're like, Yeah, this is a fluoridated toothpaste. It's, got all of the toothpaste requirements. So, yes, I'd recommend this toothpaste. It's a perfectly fine toothpaste. And they don't mean it's the best toothpaste on the market because, quite frankly, toothpaste is toothpaste for the most part. Like, get the one that has the taste you like, right? But just about every dentist would recommend that you use a toothpaste. So they put 9 out of 10 dentists recommend, our toothpaste because they recommend a toothpaste. So, yeah. Anyway, back to Karen Reed, I guess. All right. Oh, wait, we've still got a few more super chats to catch up with here. What is it? Horse welfare. Horse liquid is liquid gold. There's a lot of cash to be made. It is true. Some of those things go for like tens of thousands of dollars for a little tiny bit. Sergeant Bukaki's tainted evidence. Term you wanted was Glock models for Bad Dragon. Fender, best runkles, 2 righteously mad, 1 ADHD tired brain. You're not wrong. Julia 543, thanks for Monday Fun Day. Zora Potter swoop, thank you. Landon Eldon, hi Runkle, hello. Heather Fiddler, why can't you show a firearm on stream? There are gun channels that shoot on stream. I can't show a firearm on a live stream because YouTube has a rule against that. And the reason why they have a rule against that is because a few people were careless with firearms on stream and had some negligent things. So they said, nope, none at all. You cannot do that. You can show a pre-recorded use of a firearm. Peggy Riordan, in my state, the people have to be inside before you can shoot. Fair. Carol Greer, clip that explanation, make it short, it's needed. You mean the guns are for the weak thing? Yes, maybe I should. Rainman YYZ, can't a knowledgeable judge take judicial notice of facts about firearms they're aware of to challenge misrepresentation by a party? Not really, no. It's got to be in evidence. Crazy Cat Queen, the power I feel when I fire a weapon scares the hell out of me. Also technically not supposed to have a gun because PTSD, so baseball bat it is. And I support this too. If you don't want one, don't get one. If you shouldn't have one, don't get one. Michael Gordon, if you torture the data enough, it'll tell you whatever you want. Also true. Jin VR, remember every corrupt tyrannical government's first move is to take away your gun. It does seem like that. Michigan Farm Boy, some of these arguments by pro-gun litigants are why Fudbusters says only gun-using lawyers should be making these arguments to avoid making dumb, counterproductive arguments. He's not wrong. Slick556, AK on judge's wall, probably a gift, but gun trophies can be legally brought back if they're demilled. I traded a case of MRAs and a carton of menthols for an RPK that I had demilled and brought home. That is pretty cool. So, yeah, that is pretty cool. Okay, let's do a swoop here. Swoop. Gray Space says 2 out of 2 scientists agree my cat is the babiest boy. Love it. Laura, I got no beef with you. We got no beef. Yes, we are good. All right, let's have a look here. Okay. So here we got Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. So Commonwealth's motion to compel communications between the defendant and attorney Yannetti stored within the defendant's cell phone data. Now, I should have prepared for this because I need a thing for what my reaction was when I saw this, which was, it's tangled. Why does my goat have horns and ears? Yeah, right. Are we going to get a new goal, please? Yeah, let's go with cracking open another lucky. So I'm just going to say the number of times the prosecution in Canada has successfully acquired my communications with my client is never, because the first thing you're thinking is, oh my God, what about privilege? And Yeah. Now they have an argument about this. They have an argument. The Commonwealth seeks all texts, emails, or written communications between the defendant, Karen Reed, and attorney David Yannetti, restricted to those communications that occurred between January 29th and February 2nd. The privilege holder, Karen Reed, has waived her attorney-client privilege with attorney Yannetti relative to any statements about her collision with John O'Keefe during the time of January 29th through February 2nd. So let's talk about privilege. Privilege is an absolute wall for your, so let's say I get a client who calls me up and they're like, hey man, I just murdered a guy and the police have me the police have me in cells. What should I say? And I'd be like, well, you should say nothing. You should shut up. And you should definitely not say, hey, I just murdered a guy. And they're like, great tip. And I'm like, yeah, I'm full of great tips. Most of them are shut up. And the rest of them are also shut up. So that is like the primary job of a lawyer when you're there is like, shut up. Don't give them any like DNA samples or anything else. And also shut up. So, now let's say the government comes to me and they're like, hey, I want to know what he said to you because we think he might have admitted that he committed a murder. I get to say, hey, government, go fuck yourself. And the government goes, okay, that's what we're going to do. But let's say they subpoena me and they say, we are going to compel Runkle to testify about what he said. I will get called up to the stand and they'll be like, so Runkle, what did your client say when he called you? And I'll be like, shut up. Like, I'm shutting my mouth. And they'll be like, why? I'm like, because it's privilege. Shut the F, like, go away. I'm shutting up. Like, that's it. So, that's it. And they'll be like, well, we really want to know what he said. And it'll be like, well, tough shit. And the court will not force me to answer that question because I just get to keep my my mouth shut, right? Now, there are exceptions to privilege. One of the exceptions to privilege is what's called the crime fraud exception. And so what is the crime fraud exception? Well, let's say my client comes to me and he says, I really want to commit a murder. And I'm like, okay, have you picked out a target? And they're like, yeah, Bob. And I'm like, yeah, Bob is totally a dick. I'm going to need $10,000 and I will tell you how to commit a murder on Bob such that they will never find out. And so I take a whole bunch of money and me and my client help plan out my client murdering Bob. Well, that would be me and my client engaged in fraud, like in a crime together, and there would be no privilege. Like, there is no privilege at all that applies to that. Now, this doesn't commonly come up with murder because most lawyers realize that murder is an extremely stupid activity. Murder does not tend to get you what you want. It tends to get you in jail. Murder is usually the least successful solution to your problems. But what does happen a little bit more is when people meet and they're like, hey, I got $1 million in drug money. And I'm like, cool, that sounds like a great problem to have. And they're like, I need it to be clean money. I need it to be not drug money. And I'm like, cool, that sounds like a go F yourself. And they're like, I will give you $300,000. And not me, but some lawyer might be like, all right, so first what you need to do. And, so if you've got a lawyer who's helping somebody launder money or is helping somebody engage in shady real estate transactions, then privilege does not apply. Crime fraud exception. All right, so that is one exception. There are other exceptions. Let's say my client calls me up and he says, hey, I'm going to commit a murder. And I'm like, that's neat. And he's like, yeah, I'm on my way to my ex's house right now. I'm going to murder the heck out of her. And I'm like, cool. I got to make a phone call. And he's like, you're calling the cops, aren't you? And I'm like, nope, not calling the cops. And then I hang up the phone, and the first call I make is to the cops, because obviously it's to the cops, right? If there's an imminent threat, now this varies from place to place. Some places don't recognize this exception. But where I am, I have an obligation at that point to make a phone call to the police and be like, hey, my client is on his way to his ex's house and he's gonna totally commit a murder. You should get there first, because not murder is better than murder. So, that is another exception, the imminent threat / harm. But that has to be fairly imminent. Let's say my client comes and he says, I really want to murder my ex. And I say, yeah, you shouldn't do that. And he says, but I'm totally gonna one day. I really feel like I should murder her at some point in the future. And I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. Is that something you're planning to now? He's like, no, not this year. Like, I got plans this year. I'm going on vacation. I'm doing all the things. And I'm like, okay, well, then that's probably still covered under the privilege. And I probably can't report my client for his murder plans to happen at some vague time in future. Mr. Runkle, are you hammered or on a rail? Neither. I have had 2 beer and I'm tired. That's it. I've actually never touched the nose candy, other than I've had Ritalin, which is similar, but I'm not on it at the moment. So yeah, I mean, these are exceptions, but the big, most common exception is waiver. Now, how does attorney-client privilege get waived? Well, it gets waived in certain ways. One of the common ways it gets waived is actually intentional waiver. Why would you ever intentionally waive attorney-client privilege? Well, one of the circumstances is, let's say I go to trial and I say my client didn't argue this defense and therefore they were ineffective. I'm running an ineffective assistance of counsel argument. I might need to call my lawyer to testify about the fact that he sucks, and I will probably have to waive privilege with respect to that testimony, right? And so I'll probably have to waive privilege so that he can be examined. And he might say, you know what, I didn't, advance this argument because Runkle told me not to, or because Runkle never told me it was an argument, and all of these things, right? So, hello, Crazy Cat Queen's husband. Good to see you. I see Ian, my husband, wanted me to say hi for him. You're his favorite LawTube lawyer, and he can recognize your voice at 20 paces. Awesome. So, so that's a situation where I might very intentionally waive solicitor-client privilege. The same thing might happen if you're suing your lawyer, right? I am suing my lawyer, and and so I'm waiving attorney-client privilege. The other thing is that you can do it by accident. One of the really common ways people accidentally waive attorney-client privilege is they tell some other doofus what their lawyer said, right? So you get situations where people will phone you and they're like, I want legal advice. And you're like, great. And then they're talking, you're like, am I on speakerphone, you idiot? And they're like, yes, you're on speakerphone. My ex-girlfriend who hates me is also in the room. And I'm like, why? And he's like, I don't know. She just wanted to be here. And it's like, yeah, because she can now tell everything that you said to the cops, you moron. And he's like, oh, shit. And I'm like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have said you killed the dude in front of your... Like, all of these things, right? So, what would be a terrible example of waiver of privilege? Well, doing a documentary interview where you talk about the shit your lawyer said is a bad idea. So, that brings us back to this case. So, we went in a circle, but we're back. Yeah, it is what it is. So, The privilege holder, I see Salty Bob once had to do an ineffective assistance of counsel against his mentor. He felt terrible, but the mentor was really good, so Salty Bob wasn't able to hurt him at all. Fair. I might have refused that one, but I have tremendous regard for Salty Bob, so yeah. So the privilege holder, Karen Reed, has waived her attorney-client privilege with Attorney Yannetti relative to any statements about her collision with John O'Keefe during the time of January 29th and February 2nd, 2022. The defendant voluntarily and intentionally disclosed the existence of these communications and her initial thoughts about her culpability for causing the death of John O'Keefe during various public interviews. The communications, confirmed by the defendant to exist, are no longer privileged nor confidential because the defendant chose to widely and publicly disseminate them. Now, merely knowing about the existence of a communication is almost assuredly not enough to waive privilege. Because the knowing about the existence of it is okay. There's plenty of circumstances where they know about the existence of a communication. Let's give you the most obvious example. So, I get a call from my client who is in cells, right? He's in the police station. He says, I've been arrested. What should I do? And I'm like, shut up. And he's like, now? I'm like, yes, but also when you're talking to the police. The police know that he had that conversation. How do they know he had that conversation? Because he said, I want to talk to my lawyer. And they said, okay, we're going to put you in the phone room to talk to your lawyer. And he's like, okay, I'm phoning my lawyer now. And they're like, great, that's great. So they know that conversation happened. That's not enough to waive privilege, right? But if they know the substance of it, that's a bigger deal. So, they note, pursuant to a search warrant, the Commonwealth received the contents of the defendant's cell phone. Because of an observed attorney-client communication, the phone data was provided with the assent of the defense to the Attorney General's office, and a court-ordered taint team protocol was implemented. The Commonwealth received the defendant's phone data with any privileged communications excised. Given the defendant's public waiver of the attorney-client privilege as it pertains to the defendant's conversations with Attorney Yannetti on the 29th and the following 3 days, the Commonwealth is entitled to the communications between the defendant and Attorney Yannetti for this waived, narrow period of time. So they're like, we're only asking for a limited period. The critical period. So, in support of this motion, the Commonwealth acknowledges and respects that the attorney-client privilege protects privileged communications between a client and his or her attorney, and they provide waiver of privilege. Who can waive? Privilege holder or their legally appointed guardian, administrator, executors, or heirs. Conduct constituting waiver. A privilege is waived if the person upon whom they have the privilege voluntarily discloses or consents to disclosure of any significant part of the privileged matter, or introduces privileged communications as an element of a claim or defense. Note the any significant part, right? Any significant part. Conduct not constituting a waiver. Person merely testifies as to events which were a topic of privileged communication, i.e. they testify about, driving or whatever else on that day. There's an unintentional disclosure of a privileged communication, and reasonable precautions were taken to prevent the disclosure. What would an unintentional disclosure look like? Well, let's say I reply to my lawyer, and I accidentally hit reply all. And I say some shit I didn't mean to say, and I'm like, oh shit. And I immediately send something saying, oh my God, I'm sorry I sent you material that I shouldn't have sent you. My bad. And they're like, okay, we're going to delete that, right? That might be just an unintentional disclosure, right? Yeah. They also were noting that they say that they're requesting that the Honorable Court review in camera all text messages and written communications stored in the defendant's phone data for the time between January 29th and February 2nd. That seems like that might actually create a problem, because if the judge is reviewing it all in camera, then that might actually create a situation where the judge shouldn't know that either. So they say, in this case, the privilege holder, the defendant, has clearly and intentionally waived her attorney-client privilege regarding specific conversations she had with attorney Yannetti regarding the collision between her vehicle and John O'Keefe. For example, in the defendant's recorded interview with Gretchen Voss, the defendant concedes, "You never said, did I hit him? I hit him." Answer, "I said, could I, or did I hit him?" And then, when I talked to David, now this is later, David said, "Karen, if you incapacitated him in any way, there's capability there." And I thought, all right, maybe this is what maybe I said to my mother. Just to go forward a second, they were asking me, what if it was like, did they come out? What was the house like? Attorney Yannetti, Attorney Jackson, and Attorney Little were in attendance along with the defendant and Ms. Voss. The reason why they're pointing out that her lawyers were there is to basically say this was a far more intentional level of waiver, right? Second, in a Vanity Fair article entitled "Karen Read Tells Her Story," so a murder trial in Massachusetts with a caption, "As Karen Read's second murder trial looms, she's ready to talk about what she says really happens." The defendant, who according to the publication was notably aware that anything she said could be used against her, volunteered a rumor that alleged representations made by the Massachusetts State Police that there's a text message between her counsel that implicates herself is a provable lie. Well, denying a rumor doesn't mean waiving the privilege, right? I don't see that. I think that argument is weak as fuck. Third, in the now airing 5-part docuseries on Investigation Discovery and HBO Max entitled "A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Read," the defendant professes, "And then when I hired David Yannetti, I asked him those questions the night of January 29th. Like, David, what if, I don't know, what if I ran his foot over? Or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out? Or went to care for himself and he threw up or passed out?" And David said, "Yeah, then you have some element of culpability." So that's how I thought about things for about 3 days. This is also the statement they want. They want this statement in. They want this to basically say she thought she hit him. She was asking her lawyer, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? So, yep. She should not have done these interviews. I'm just going to say that straight up. And this could be a situation where she ends up in a lot of shit. This might have been a major oops on that. So, yeah. The privilege holder is the defendant, and the defendant intentionally waived her privilege by disclosing her conversations to a nationwide audience with her attorney. The attorney-client privilege can be waived only by the client. The lawyer can't waive attorney-client privilege. In addition to rendering the communications non-privileged, the communications are relevant as admissions and statements of the defendant. An admission is anything that is against interest, right? An admission is anything that that you say that harms your case, right? These statements are admissible substantively, and attorney Yannetti's statements to the defendant are admissible pertaining to the defendant's state of mind. Also, the defendant's admissions and attorney Yannetti's statements are relevant to challenge the defense's later purported claims of third-party culpability. The communications have relevance to rebut the defense's potential claims that some other person committed the crimes that caused the death of John O'Keefe. Moreover, the defense has suggested that as part of its defense, it is likely to pursue a Bowden-type defense. The potential evidence is relevant to rebut claims of law enforcement contrivance. Okay, so they want those messages, and that is... that's a big one. So, we also have an affidavit on this one, and the affidavit is short. The affidavit begins with, "My name is Hank Brennan." And the good thing is that he spelled it correctly, but he didn't spell privileged correctly. Non-privileged. Yeah. So, yeah, that is a thing there. My name is Hank Brennan. I've been appointed special prosecutor assigned as a lead counsel. Now I'm going to find out something like that he's dyslexic or something, and I'm going to feel real bad. So I've been appointed special prosecutor assigned as lead counsel for the case of Commonwealth versus Karen Read. I have reviewed several public statements made by the defendant relative to this case, including but not limited to the defendant's interview with Gretchen Voss and her appearance on an ongoing documentary. The Commonwealth intends... So you haven't watched the trial, but you're watching the documentary? Okay. The Commonwealth intends on introducing an and number of the defendant's statements, including the statements included in the attached motion. Pursuant to a search warrant, the Commonwealth is in possession of the defendant's cell phone data. The data is subject to a taint team protocol, and any redacted communications are not available for the undersigned counsel to review. Undersigned counsel requests this court review any redacted communications. This is in your argument, not in your affidavit. Ex parte, and provide the Commonwealth that any with all relevant non-privileged. Oh, he spelled privileged correct there. Communications as requested in the attached motions. I believe the communications requested are non-privileged because the discussions with Attorney Yannetti during the requested time frame and subject matter of the defendant striking John O'Keefe have been intentionally disclosed to the public by the privilege holder and are no longer confidential. All right. So, that is, that's a whole thing. Now, there's one other thing. And again, on how this documentary is causing her some real problems, potentially. Commonwealth's motion for production or for records, Unsolved Productions Incorporated. So, pursuant to Lampron, they want Unsolved Productions Incorporated to produce all unedited video and audio recordings in their possession from the docuseries A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Reed. I actually think that one of those recordings might actually... I think that this is the group that I did an interview with that then they later said they didn't want to use the footage, I think. So, Brennan might actually get some runkle in his discovery. Hi, Brennan! If he is, Brennan, please hit the subscribe button. In support of its motion, the Commonwealth states the following. On June 9th, the defendant was indicted for second-degree murder, manslaughter, etc. A jury trial on all three indictments began on April 16th. Following the deadlocked jury and a finding of manifest necessity, the court declared a mistrial. The defendant's retrial is scheduled on April 1st. However, the Commonwealth has assented to the defendant's request to temporarily delay the trial, which the court has said, no, we're not doing that. On March 17th, 18th, and 19th, they aired a 5-part docuseries entitled A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Reed. The aired docuseries is approximately 4.5 hours of a behind-the-scenes look at the defense team as it prepares for the April 2024 jury trial and features extensive interviews with the defendant, Karen Reed, Alan Jackson, David Yannetti, and attorney Elizabeth Little. You'll note that there's one attorney there who's left out, and that attorney is Alessi. So that's interesting to me. Terry Muir, president of Unsolved Productions and the producer of the 5-part docuseries, has described in media interviews that the access to the defendant and her defense team was unprecedented, or unprecedented. Just unprecedented. Not unprecedented, just unprecedented. As part of this docuseries, the defendant and her counsel permitted cameras to record their trial preparation sessions in the war room, the car rides to and from court, where the defendant and her counsels discuss upcoming testimonies and trial strategies, often commenting on the evidence. Prosecutor. Oh, I wonder what they comment on the prosecutor. So, he wasn't publicly known to be on the case. Fair enough. What is it? They comment on the prosecutor. I wonder what they said about the prosecutor. Or the court. Again, wonder what they said. And one-on-one interviews with the defendant and defense counsels. Every statement made by the defendant pertaining to the facts and circumstances surrounding the death of John O'Keefe is relevant and evidentiary, especially given the nature of past statements made by the defendant. In this 5-part docuseries, the defendant again makes inconsistent statements with previous statements she had made to law enforcement, witnesses, and most revealing to other media reporters during other voluntary interviews. For example, the defendant now claims that she unequivocally saw John O'Keefe enter 34 Fairview Road and admits to consuming large amounts of vodka and being significantly impaired. Her position, even within this 5-part docuseries, wavers from a claim that she remembers every detail from January 29th to admissions that maybe her memory wasn't as clear where she'd been drinking. That is fairly common. The defendant confirms animosity in a relationship, confirms the altercation with Marietta Sullivan in Aruba. Yeah, I think everybody knows that she had a fight with Marietta Sullivan in Aruba, but we also have opinions on Marietta Sullivan in Aruba. Confirms her flirtatious text with Brian Higgins. I don't think those were ever denied. Confirms that she was angry with John O'Keefe and convinced that John may have been cheating on her with other women who resided in the neighborhood around 34 Fairview Road. The defendant further discusses going to John O'Keefe's residence during the late morning of January 29, 2022, and mocks Mrs. O'Keefe's opinion that John looked like he'd been hit by a car. I don't think he looked like he'd been hit by a car, but I think he looked like he'd been bit by a dog. Contrary to representations made to the court on March 18, 2025, the defendant admits on the March 17th aired episodes that she used an intermediary to share discovery with Aidan Carney, then with permission of her defense counsel, shared public information, presumably all discovery provided to the defense that would not ordinarily not be deemed public, due to the investigatory nature of the prosecution with Mr. Carney. How the fuck is he taking a reading of shared public information to that this would include the not public information? Like, if I say I shared all of my red candy, it's like, presumably also the blue candy. No, I didn't say that. That's an entirely new sentence. Right? Mr. Carney then used this material to advance the defendant's narrative and direct harassment of witnesses. She further admitted that she spoke with Mr. Carney regularly about her case. Further, contrary to representations made to this court, on the March 18, 2025 episodes, the defendant expressed reckless indifference that the witnesses, many who came to the defendant's aid, may have been intimidated and harassed, and the defendant stated, "Jen McCabe, it's me or her. Either I'm going down, Jen, or you are." Yeah, it's because she thinks Jen is a criminal. So this 5-part docuseries is also ripe of new information previously unknown to the Commonwealth. For example, the defendant's statement that John O'Keefe exited her vehicle holding her vodka soda drink, that she clearly saw John's body from Kerry Roberts' vehicle, and that she pulled a small piece of glass from John O'Keefe's nose. The defendant further reveals her initial beliefs in the immediate aftermath of John O'Keefe's death, stating to Attorney Yannetti and waiving any associated privileges, "What if I ran his foot over, or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out and or went to care for himself and he threw up or passed out?" A lot of this could be awful. Could be awful. We are at 1 minute left and we're at 9 out of 10 on the goal. You guys have 1 minute to hit the goal. The defendant also repeatedly used the media to promote her position, explicitly stating in a Vanity Fair article, "If I can get the entire truth," and then square brackets, "as articulated by the defendant," of this case out in the public forum, that to me is priceless. That editing is a bit of a thing. Also, we got like 45 seconds. Oh, no, 1 minute. 1 minute exactly to hit that last super chat. Oh, man. All right. During this 5-part docuseries, there we go. Thank you, Light Queen. The defendant declares that doing this film is my testimony. I want to say what happened exactly as it happened. This trial by media strategy has repeatedly been employed by the defendant and Morrissey. Like, I'm sorry, did you not see Morrissey do an entire interview where he's like, "These witnesses are very credible and you should believe them, future jurors"? Like, come on. You know, Brennan, like, let's not pretend that your side here has been completely, dancing with the angels. All right. The Commonwealth is entitled to, and justice dictates, production of the defendant's own statements, particularly as proclaimed to be what exactly happened. In the defendant's various media interviews, she contradicts her own statements and makes admissions that the victim did not appear mortally wounded, that she thought she clipped and unknowingly incapacitated the victim. Further statements are likely relevant when compared to past statements. The defendant's statements are not hearsay because she says them herself and because they're admissions and so forth. Anything that is against your interest is not hearsay. So, yeah. Are not hearsay and are instead substantive evidence admitted for its full force of proof. When a defendant deliberately undertakes a public relations campaign and saturates the public and the potential jury pool with statements likely to reach the potential juror pool, they also run the risk that statements may not be beneficial and be incriminatory. The helpfulness or unhelpfulness of the statement does not direct legal basis for disclosure. The unaired statements made by the defendant and her counsels would be relevant and material to put the relevant aired statements, many of which will be introduced to trial, in context. Further, the absence of details provided in the unaired footage is fertile grounds for examination of witnesses at trial. So, discussion. Pursuant to the rules of evidence, they seek to introduce multiple statements made by the defendant. A defendant's statement is not hearsay and is admissible when it was made by or adopted by the defendant. And the hearsay exceptions for statements by a party opponent encompasses any extrajudicial statement made by a party opponent and not just statements that are inculpatory or against the party's interests. So basically, when they say that you can, anything that you say may be used against you, they mean against you. The other side can use your shit, but you can't use it for your own defense, right? So that is a big problem there. The statements you might make to police can literally only hurt you. There is no universe where they actually assist you with anything. So, yeah, you got to be real careful about all of that. All right. The defendant and her counsel cannot avail themselves of a media strategy to publicize and promote the defendant's varying claims to the public at large and the potential jury pool while simultaneously excising statements and admissions that may not be favorable to her cause. So basically, I think that they're envisioning that there's statements that are there that that might not be helpful, that might have been cut. Further, under Massachusetts law, it is well settled that news reporters do not have a constitutionally based testimonial privilege that other citizens do not have. In Massachusetts, there's no qualified journalist privilege that protects against disclosure of confidential and non-confidential press materials. Even if such privilege did exist, parties seeking disclosure of non-confidential materials are entitled to seek discovery from a media entity if they can show that the materials at issue are of likely relevance to a significant issue in the case and are not reasonably obtainable from other sources. But aren't these people in California? And so you'd have to actually get an order in California, right? Because if they're not in Massachusetts, then that's a problem. So, yeah. The records are not otherwise procurable reasonably in advance of trial, as they are not held in the care, custody, or control of the Commonwealth or the defendant, and the entity will not produce the records without a court order. That I'm sure of. Can we have your materials? No, go F yourself. The Commonwealth cannot properly prepare for trial without such production and inspection in advance of trial, and the failure to obtain such inspection may tend unreasonably to delay the trial. No, if they don't give it to you, then you're just not getting it. It's not going to delay shit. It's just you won't have it. So, the Commonwealth expects to introduce the records at trial as evidence of the charges against the defendant. Furthermore, the defendant is entitled to review these records in their entirety prior to trial. Part of the Commonwealth's consideration to assent to the defendant's request for a short delay in the trial is in part due to this plethora of new information revealed to a national audience that is extremely relevant and material to the defendant's criminal intent and conduct. And they attach an affidavit. Now, I would love to see a delay in this trial because this trial is scheduled for the worst possible time for me. I don't want to do it in April. I want to do my writing and not have to fight writing with recaps and all of this shit. But that's not how this is going to go, is it? I'm going to have to write and Supreme. Oh God, this is going to suck. So, yes. And here's their affidavit. This will be the last thing we cover tonight, folks, because I do got to get more writing done. I think I might be at the, sort of Balmer peak where I can get past my writer's block without getting sauced. So, so their affidavit in support for the Commonwealth's motion for records. 1, my name is Hank Brennan. We know your name. You signed it at the bottom of the affidavit. And I'm a special assistant district attorney and the lead trial attorney for the above docketed case. I wonder if they're going to let Lally do anything, because Lally has not gotten out of his chair yet. I am moving to produce records in the above captioned matter. We know you filed that. I am requesting a prompt hearing on this motion. No, that goes into your motion, not into your affidavit. And in consideration of this court's scheduling order and upcoming trial date. The Commonwealth will hand serve a copy of this affidavit and accompanying motion to the registered agent of the Commonwealth on March 20th, 2025. Why are you serving it to yourself? Okay, Unsolved Productions is registered with the Secretary of State for doing business in Massachusetts. That might be enough to ground them, to force them to turn stuff over. Has a registered agent in Boston, and the docuseries was filmed entirely in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts during the defendant's first trial. So that may mean that they have to turn it over. On June 9th, the defendant was indicted by a Norfolk grand jury for second-degree murder, etc., etc., etc. April 16th, 10-week jury trial. We know about the deadlock. We know about the scheduling. The Commonwealth alleges that on January 29th, while intoxicated, the defendant struck John O'Keefe with the rear of her Lexus SUV and left him to die in blizzard conditions. At approximately 6:04 a.m., the defendant, accompanied by Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts, discovered the victim, John O'Keefe, alongside the road and outside 34 Fairview Road, Canton, Massachusetts. While on scene, the defendant made statements to first responders that she hit him and that this was all her fault. The defendant has challenged the Commonwealth's evidence in this case to include allegations of police misconduct, claims that the Commonwealth tampered with evidence, and accusations that the Commonwealth has framed the defendant with murder. These are allegations that the defendant and attorney Jackson Yannetti and Little put forth in the 5-part docuseries A Body in the Snow, the trial of Karen Reed. Importantly, in the aired portions of A Body in the Snow, it features unprecedented, that must be on purpose, access to the defendant and her attorneys during the defendant's first trial. All of this, the plethora of information, both from counsels and the defendant, is extremely material and relevant to the charges and the evidence. The defendant's multitude of inconsistent statements and admissions are admissible evidence. That's argument. This is not in your affidavit. This is in your argument. Get affidavits separate from that. In both the Commonwealth's case in chief and in rebuttal. What the Commonwealth and nationwide audience has been able to learn and view over the 3 nights of aired footage is prolific and newly revealed information. Pursuant to the rules, the Commonwealth seeks to introduce statements not limited to oral assertions, but also the nonverbal conduct captured on film by the defendant. What is the best example of nonverbal conduct? Well, let's say I'm a police officer and I'm interrogating Bob, and I'm like, Bob, did you kill Frank? And Bob goes, that's nonverbal contact, right? Bob's mouth is not moving. That's not moving. But if his head moves in a nod, a jury could reasonably assume that that was an admission to the murder, right? So, yeah. A defendant's statement is not hearsay and is admissible against the defendant when the statement was made by or adopted by the defendant. So, yeah. We don't need to cover that again because we already covered it. The Commonwealth's motion is not a fishing expedition. We just happen to get a lot of fish. As it is reasonably likely to produce additional statements of the defendant. The limited broadcast is devoid of additional context that will be helpful for the jurors to learn relative to the admission by the defendant. Further, the first trial spanned over 11 weeks, and the production of this documentary followed and recorded the defendant and her counsels leading up to trial and during the entirety of the trial. It is reasonable to believe there is more than the aired approximately 5.5 hours of video footage. Thus, the Commonwealth seeks a copy of this evidence in its entirety. I suspect they're going to get this evidence. If they have a If they are located in Boston, then I suspect that they get this evidence. The privilege issue is weaker, but I suspect that Judge Bev will allow it. And here's the thing, is that if they get more communications, more of this video, then there might be even more of that. Now, I see somebody saying they're not located in Boston, they're located in California. Except if they've got a registered agent in Boston, they might be sufficiently located in Boston to count as located in Boston. This is the thing, is if they've got enough stuff to be subject to Boston law. So that is going to be the question. I don't know how Bev's going to resolve it, but yeah. As Karen said about the other fishing expeditions, no reporter will sit on an admission of guilt. That's true. But she might have said something somewhere that the jury might take as an admission, or that they could spin that way. They tried it and got told to heck off with ABC. ABC, we'll see. I just don't have a whole lot of confidence in the judge on this one. So, yeah, registered agent is not controlling. I do remember that. I do remember that with the ABC stuff, but... we'll see. I mean, Judge Bev may say, hey, you get everything, or they may say, I mean, she may say, just use the documentary. And the thing is if nothing else, they've got the documentary. Now, I see the registered agent is for accepting service, but didn't they say that they are registered for doing business in Massachusetts? That might be a little bit more. I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't know how to predict Judge Bev. She's gone against her previous rulings on all of this. She's, yeah, but the documentary they've already got, right? They can already use the documentary. That they're not going to have a problem with. It's the other stuff that's the question. All right, let's get to Super Chats because I'm getting tired and I got to still work. Grayspace says, 2 out of 2 scientists agree that my cat is the babyest boy. I don't know, Zora might be the babyest boy, even though she's a girl. Greg says, Ian, I said this in the Discord a while back, but I think this Karen Reed case needs a permanent pigeon business watermark on screen one discussing it. Yes, but then it would get old. Michigan Farm Boy, isn't this akin to when they tried to use Karen calling a drunk driving lawyer as consciousness of guilt in the last trial? Kind of, but kind of different. Southern Mom, if granted, seems like this waiver could derail the trial. Brennan is exhausting and hell-bent on winning. I feel like they'd have to do an adjournment if they granted that, because that's a huge thing. Patty Hoffman, more beer. Thank you. Peggy Riordan, shouldn't the Tate team do the review? You'll notice I'm not putting up another goal for another beer because this one I'm going to nurse for a while. Greg, how could they get that in if she doesn't testify? Isn't this something that can only come in through her? No, they can get it in through people who heard it, etc. Emily says there's a letter with the Commonwealth on it, providing they only found 2 texts from Karen to some outside attorney and 0 to her current counsel. This is dumb. If that's what the Taint team found, then there's not a whole lot. Kim Carter, what you said the other day is my new favorite thing. He needs to invent a new kind of fuck in which to off. Slight paraphrase. Thank you. AG says the production team said defense counsel contacted them. Why? What? Opinions? I'm a mere transcriber studying to be a court reporter. This baffles me. I'm baffled too. I don't know. Light Queen says goal. Thank you. Ice Baby says, did I help with the goal? Lol, I'm all for the winning. Thank you so much. And thank you for the new membership. Much appreciated. Grayspace, Brennan failed to get records from ABC in New York through the registered agent in Massachusetts. The lawyer said, no, this is not allowed. Here's law, and was correct. It may go the same way this time. It may not. We'll have to see. She may say, I'm going to give it to him. Peggy Riordan, what if the production company destroyed all their stuff? They didn't. I'm sure they didn't. Chelsea Rama, eventually would love your opinion on California Bill AB 1333. I haven't seen it. Critics say it would make self-defense illegal. Hope not. I hope not too, but I'll have to check it out. Emerson Gray, what if it's a setup and the documentary team has footage from Chris Albert's bench where the McAlberts are discussing what really happened? I doubt it. Nico K, thanks for the stream. Good luck with writing. Thank you so much. And B. Cheen, thank you for the gifted membership. Much appreciated. All right. So, yeah, I don't think they're sitting on any bombshells, because if they had a bombshell, they would have put it in the documentary. Like if they had something like, somebody saying, I I am the real killer, then they'd be like, yeah, that's going in. Morgan says, what is the best way to send me docs of a crazy case? Email, runkleofthebailey@gmail.com. So, mistress's mentor, Ashley Madison style, sued wife after mistress doxed wife and kids, and there's so much worse. Oh, wow. Okay, that's bizarre. All right. All right, let's wrap this up here because I'm going to get... it is about 10 o'clock my time. We've been going for about 3 hours and 15 minutes. I'm going to get about 4 more hours of work in. Get to sleep at around 2, and then get about 4 hours of sleep, and then wake up and back to it. Yay! The life of an insomniac who's got so much homework to do. So I will see all you guys later. Thank you so much for joining me, and see you next week, I hope. Although next week is the day before trial. We might skip that. I might see about doing date night next Monday, and then we'll start with recaps on the 1st. That might make sense. So, all right. Good night, all.